TopLobsta Productions.
In the shadows of the ancient ones, they never went away. They're still here today.
Nephilim Death Squad. When the last trumpet sounds and the heavens crack, blah, 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 blah. Nephilim Death Squad. Nephilim Death Squad. Death Squad. Death Squad. Death Squad.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Nephilim Death Squad. I am David Lee Corbo, a.k.a. The Raven. That is TopLobsta, the father of disinformation.
What's up?
And before we get into today's guest, a little reminder, if you want to support us, patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad is the place to be. You'll get early access to episodes, ad-free listening experiences. You're also going to get dibs on tickets to Bohemian Grove before the general public does. And this coming Monday, 4/20,
You have it?
there it is. We're going to release our VIP tickets, and as of right now, there are only 50 available because our studio is small, and that's where the VIP experience is going to be. So they're going to go really fast. If you want those, keep an eye out. They'll be available on toplobsta.com, but we'll be updating the Patreon as we go forward. Also, discounts off of merchandise from toplobsta.com. Show us something. Pick something, dude. Pick a shirt.
It's all in the egg.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Hey.
David dressed as Aleister Crowley. It's all in the egg.
That's not Aleister
No, that's
Crowley.
not.
That's an egg,
Sitting
man.
on your
That's
wall.
the Eggman.
Humpty Dumpty.
Joining us again for the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th time, 9th time, 10th time, maybe, is Austin Picard. Welcome back, Austin. We've named this episode the Austism Report.
We're branding for you, so
Branding left and right. It's good to have you back, brother. Before we get into this conversation, let's tell everybody where they can find your shit and what you all about.
Hell yeah, boys. You already know I appreciate and love you guys more than, honestly, I think you're aware. And I'm forever grateful
dude,
for
we
these
love you.
opportunities.
Stop that. We love you.
Man,
Look at
I'm
me.
telling
Look at
you.
me. I love
It's,
you.
you guys legitimately just what you offer is far more valuable than I think people realize, and especially in the current moment with this clear and obvious attack on the First Amendment and violation of free speech. The Project Esther is alive and well. I think there's just so much to the notion of wielding anti-Semitism as a sort of tool and a weapon to violate the First Amendment. But anyway, yeah, so you guys already know the Underclass podcast is the best place to find me. And basically, it's interesting because I've been kind of reeling down the rabbit hole, proverbially. Oh my God, I haven't been able to say this word for the past 2 weeks.
Honestly, you
Don't
could
ask
just
us.
just make it up, and we would have no idea.
So I basically have been reeling down this rabbit hole in regard to the Delta Project and the Odyssey Foundation, which involves John David Norman and essentially John Wayne Gacy and this very well-established and well-entrenched, sort of systematically entrenched a pedophile network that it's another window and glimpse into this pedophile underworld. So I'm eager to basically climb back out of this rabbit hole, so to speak, and resurface and take a deep breath. But yeah, for the time being, I'm kind of as everyone else is in the current moment, trying to desperately digest this demoralizing news cycle that seems to be hyperactive. And there's something to. Anyway, the point being though is that obviously keep a lookout for the next solo project that I have in the works, and I think it will once again, as Mark Tutreau in that case very much represents these direct parallels to the Epstein network, and I think I'm beginning to realize that basically the Epstein network is essentially just a rebrand, right, from what was initially the Roy Cohn sexual blackmail operation. At the very least, he was a key prominent figure in this context, and And I mean, this goes back to we honestly, I feel like we should discuss a little bit of the Pizzagate narrative within the context of the Epstein files, because I discovered this very strange kind of direct overlap between basically James Alefantis having these extraordinary connections to Mossad, right? And not only Mossad, but Jeffrey Epstein. And so that in itself even stems all the way back to Abraham Beam, who's the mayor who essentially was involved in this overarching sexual blackmail operation that Detective James Rothstein had exposed through. He basically was an investigator who also was a member of military intelligence, unfortunately, when he was serving. And so he knew Frank Sturgis, who was one of the Watergate burglars, right? And he actually even was the individual who got a tip that Frank Sturgis was headed to basically murder Fidel Castro's essentially love interest, right, at the time, which is a very strange story if you look into it. And it seemingly involves, if you remember, this individual of prominence that was obviously sent to assassinate Fidel Castro, right? It's whenever you see these overlapping threads that combine all these various cases that are really the most kind of
all these cases and all these familiar names. Like, it's just so crazy that all your
They're
favorite
all
people
ancestrally tied together.
Yeah, they all play together. It's just bizarre.
But
Everything is like that.
I want to bring something. I don't know if you've seen this, but apparently JD Vance is talking about looking into opening up an investigation into Pizzagate.
That's timely.
Yeah, it is interesting how that.
When the hell was that? That was yesterday.
Yesterday, yeah. But at the same time, I mean, what it seems like to me is it seems like they're going to try to get in front of it and spin their own narrative, because you have Melania Trump, who is the other day calling for the reinvestigation of everybody in the Epstein files, and then JD Vance is now talking about. Yes, which is undermining what her husband has been saying the entire time, which is like nothing to see here. She's saying, no, these people need to be brought to justice.
That's interesting.
It is interesting for somebody who doesn't really go out there and do political statements as much. She's more of like this figure in the back.
I've said in the past too, like, she's kind of a strange one. Just
she's a strange one.
Genius level visa, like all the bizarre crap having to do with her, and how she is like, she has all the makings of a big player, but she's in the background. And I think that she's going to come to the forefront at some point. Interesting to see her calling for justice on the Epstein files.
Well, you have her and the vice president now who are calling for more investigations into these two things that you seem to think are related, or at least like tangential to each other. So what do you think about that?
Good use of the word tangential.
Hell yeah.
Man, so this is very fascinating to me because, again, obviously understanding the pizza references overwhelmingly just evident in terms of just overrepresented, right, in the files, and also the context, which was very clearly coded language that involves this kind of pedophile playbook. But
I think there was one email in particular that said, "I can't wait to fuck me a slice of pizza." And I said, what does that mean, dude? What on earth?
Yeah, you would definitely. And honestly, to that point, there's this strange connection that I discovered in regard to a password protected members only website that was apparently on a private server that was connected to this members only website for Comet Ping Pong Pizza that James Alefantis had set up, right? And so what's interesting is that it had a server with this massive amount of downloadable private videos and also photographs, which to me is child pornography and more than likely even snuff potentially, which is always kind of just falls into this sinister kind of playbook, right? They're always going to at the very least, exhaust every last opportunity in terms of the enterprise. And so I see basically they were providing download keys to these members of this members only website, private server, and essentially for me personally, it's like what sort of pizza restaurant would even operate like this, right? That in itself at face value is you should be very skeptical. And considering the notion that the Podestas were so close, especially Tony with
Yeah.
James Alefantis,
Mhm.
then that begs the question, right?
Do you
How
believe,
where
by the way, that I'm sorry to interrupt, but do you believe that's
Mhm.
really his name? Because it's like a James Bond villain, James
It really
Alefantis, right?
is.
It's because in French it means like boy lover.
Does it?
Yeah, Jamais Alefantis or some shit means like boy lover, and
And this could
that's
be just like one of those Owen Benjamin
well,
things
yeah, where
where they have
God
to
is
tell
very
you.
funny. He's like, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, you want to be a pedophile? Go
Bernie
ahead.
Madoff with your money.
Exactly.
Mhm.
But I kind of look at that and I go like, that seems a little bit too on the nose. I don't know if he was Jewish, but is that like, is that a made up name? Is that like a, I don't know what you would call that. But do you think that all evidence points that that is a real name?
I definitely think that. Well, and even considering the photograph that he used for his profile picture on Instagram, I believe was this sort of a construct from this ancient deity that essentially was propped up, and basically this, I believe it was a. I'm trying to remember now which leader was in reference to, because essentially it was basically the individual was responsible for, he was a pedophile, he was attracted to underage boys, and so he created a religion around it, and basically implemented this religion culturally in society at the time, and this obviously began the interesting practice of worshiping young boys, but in reality it was not setting them on a pedestal. It was truly just an opportunistic window into traumatic sexual abuse, right?
Yeah.
Which you then claim is almost a divine ordained by God path that you are now following. And so it was all about this boy love, essentially, is what it was in regard to, and it was an ancient kind of precedent that was set in this strange culture. But man, I'm trying to remember now because I forget. I had that as a note
C-Dub,
somewhere. But
C-Dub says the Greeks did this, and it's interesting
Mhm.
because you see that Greek sort of aesthetic in a lot of this, right? Some of those videos that came out of what looked to be a bathhouse or something that were associated with all of these Pizzagate findings in Epstein Island. You have children that are dressed in togas, and the aesthetic of the bathhouse is very Greek, the pillars and such, and they're serving the people who are there.
Well,
So yeah, there's like an ancient cultural thing.
Even in the movie Troy with Brad Pitt, so he plays Achilles, which might be a Nephilim, but his assistant, his squire, in the actual book, I think it's like Homer, the Iliad.
He fucks
That's
him?
that's his
What?
lover. That's his, but that was like common in that time period or culture. So it's like it's kind of a holdover of that.
That's gay.
So
yeah.
I did just pull this note, and basically James Alefantis translates to, as you said, "J'aime les enfants," which is
Right.
in French, "I love children," and so yeah.
That's
But
crazy.
then you have James Alefantis with this Greek figure that we were just kind of referencing, and Antinous, as his profile picture on Instagram. And so it turns out that Antinous tells the story of his travels as a boy companion lover of King Hadrian, right? Hadrian.
Oh,
And so, yeah, it does
that's
seem as.
crazy.
Mhm. And, I'm sure it wouldn't take much, because I remember I looked this up at one point in the past, and I discovered who King Hadrian technically was and what he represented. And,
It's
yeah.
what's funny though about all of these strings that you could pull on, where it's like not only is there this conspiracy, but it's like, yeah, even the names, right? Even the names
Mhm.
mean I love children, and then the profile picture leads to some sort of pedophilic shit. It's like over and over again this mounting. Call it anecdotal if you want to err on the side of caution, but it's huge. It's a giant pile of evidence that points this. Remember how much people were ridiculed for this, for thinking that Pizzagate had legs, for thinking that, just for a moment, I don't know, like, stop what we're doing here, guys. Let's entertain the thought. I think they're fucking these kids. And you would
Oh, yeah.
laugh out of the room. You were ridiculed. They were running, specials on CNN, on Fox News about all the Pizzagate conspiracies and how wild it all is. And then it gets adjacent to QAnon. And then, that gets ridiculed too. And over again, we're made to believe that we're gaslit. We're gaslit by the mainstream media into thinking that we're assholes, when in reality, no, they're fucking these kids. And they have been for a really long time. And even their Greek heroes were fucking these kids. So that's really nice.
Yeah, and so it turns out this is Emperor Hadrian, who ruled from 117 to 138 CE, and is known for significant contributions to the Roman Empire, including the consolidation of borders and administrative reforms, notable relationships with a young Greek named Antinous, who became his lover. Antinous was born around 111 CE. I believe he died at 20 years old, was how old he was. And so Hadrian had this strange relationship with this young Greek, who later basically deified after his death, is what essentially happened. So it led to the establishment of a cult, the Antinous cult, which worshipped him as a deity. And
Wow.
And this cult spread throughout the Roman Empire, celebrating Antinous as a symbol of love and divinity. So
Right.
this is a pedophile religion, is legitimately what it is.
Can we stop for a second and admire how gangster the guy, if you believe that this story is as it's told on face value, the guy who walks into the coffee shop and fires rounds into the floor, whatever it is.
Madison Welch.
Yeah, saying that
Just because he
they're.
heard some shit, maybe.
I mean, honestly, the level of conviction.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so if that really is, and it's not just some psyop or whatever, it's made to make the entire thing look ridiculous, so that people think that only crazy people are doing this, like this guy who shoots up the floor. But if it is at all true that this guy was compelled by his research to go,
It was a pizza shop, not a coffee shop. Don't say
did I say coffee shop? My mistake.
Bad juju.
Go into this coffee shop. I mean, damn it, I did it again. Pizza shop, and go fucking. They're fucking these kids under the floor, and then he lets off some rounds. I mean,
this is the most ridiculous narrative that formed around this individual, Edgar Madison Welch, who, by the way, inevitably just what in a routine traffic stop decides to, and not even the driver, Edgar decides to pull a weapon on the police officers, who then proceed to shoot him at point blank range and legitimately execute him. I mean, is essentially what happened.
You've never done that before?
Suicide by cop.
By the way, somebody in the chat there, Gerald Hall, your mom, says
Oh,
that
your
he
mom's
fired
great.
one round and he hit the server. Is that true?
He hit the basically, yeah, he hit the hard drive, and that was the only actual bullet that affected anything whatsoever. And I believe it was only 3 rounds that he did fire. But yeah, when you look at Comet Ping Pong Pizza and Edgar's connections to first of all, his father's connections are what matter most, because genealogy seems to tell the hidden story, right? And as always, if you peel back that layer and just dip a little bit below the surface, the entire just sort of alternative theory that seems far more plausible reveals itself. And so 3 doors down from Comet Ping Pong Pizza, I believe the whole block was involved in a real way. And I think that if you pull up the map, you can see not only the pedophile symbols involved with the shops nearby, right, the local businesses near Comet Ping Pong, but you also it seems to kind of lend a little bit more credibility to the notion that there was a construction that was being done under the properties, and we're talking potential tunnel system, and that is what people refuse to admit and acknowledge, because allegedly on the website it claimed that they didn't have a basement. Well, here's the problem: is that we have actual documentation from the city that shows there used to be subway tunnels below this business, and they claim it was filled in, but yet they had a construction job, which in my opinion either removed all of the debris that had been filled in under the property itself to then prop back up the tunnel system that was available to them and the nearby businesses involved in this enterprise. That's what happened. This is how I view it. And so you see 3 doors down from Comet Ping Pong Pizza, another pizza restaurant. It was called Besta Pizza. If you look up this picture, Besta Pizza, it is uncanny. This was a legitimate sex symbol from the pedophile coded symbol, symbols that they utilize.
Yeah, these are the FBI recognized symbols that they use to communicate with one another.
Exactly. And Besta logo or Besta Pizza's logo happened to identically resemble the boy lover pedophile code symbol based on the 2007 declassified FBI document. So,
which is the
interesting.
triangle with the spiral, right?
Exactly. So
Holy shit, dude.
Can you
look
bring
it
that
up,
up?
bud.
Yeah.
I want to see this. But you know what? Another one was associated with this. Wow, that's pretty
not,
blatant.
not even trying to hide it.
Not even trying to hide
Right.
it. Voodoo Donut for a time was getting wrapped up in all of this too. Did you ever hear anything about that, Austin? The donut place that's voodoo themed?
Right. Yes. Now, I think that it's undeniable in this area there was a sort of an overrepresentation, because I think this was kind of a geographical structured system that was, being utilized and exploited in that way. And so knowing, you can just kind of connect the ownership as well, which is very interesting. But as far as that specific shop, I didn't do a deep dive personally, so I can't 100% verify, but I do, just from the outside looking in at face value, take it seriously as far as just considering it. And and I'll have to actually
They're doing a lot of
continue.
the same thing. It's like spirals in all of their designs and everything. It's it's funny. It seems rather innocuous. Isaac Cappy though did mention Voodoo Donut, and at the time when the pedophile symbolism was deciphered and made public, as far as all these spirals and everything, what year was that? Maybe 2016, right? 2016.
2007, I think, was when you actually had the symbols declassified in the document. But yeah, it didn't necessarily get any real traction publicly until this scandal took place.
Well,
'Cause basically-
much later
Look at
on,
this.
then
This is like in classic NDS fashion. We'll have back-to-back shows where we're talking about not necessarily the same subject, but these important
they were
things
just
come
talking
up.
about Cappy, right?
But we were talking about Cappy, and now we're talking about. I mean, in the chat, they were talking about the relationship to Tracy Twyman, who was involved in a lot of this weird esoteric shit.
That's
ends up dead as
insane.
well.
We just talked about Tracy Twyman hanging herself in her garage, right? 30 minutes ago. That's actually very strange. But yeah, in that Isaac Cappy video, he talks about all of their social medias going private when all that information came out about the logos, which is crazy as hell. Talk about sort of an admission of guilt, freaking out, blocking all your stuff or turning it all private, and then not changing any of your logos, by the way. Like, that's very strange as well. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff on Voodoo Donut. Might be worth looking into. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail you.
No, you're good. I think it's very much worthwhile in looking into, and just as far as I think this applies to not only DC. I mean, this is happening in San Francisco as well. I think it was called Goat Hill Pizza, which was a restaurant that ties into Nancy Pelosi and even the Goose for 2.0 leaks, which clearly is the Seth Rich angle, and that involves the Podesta leaks and everything else in regard to Pizzagate. So it turns out Goat Hill Pizza was allegedly used as a front company to funnel money to Democrats, right? And so you look into it, and yeah, seemingly Goose for 2.0 leaked that Nancy Pelosi's email account was registered with Goat Hill Pizza and made numerous donations to the Democratic Party through this. And Goose for basically, along with the credentials to the login, apparently to this campaign website. And yeah, it's goathill.com is basically the at goathill.com is the email essentially. But it's strange because if you look into it a little bit deeper, then you realize that NAMBLA was actually having like organized meetings at Goat Hill Pizza. And
That's right. Yeah.
And so whenever you begin to realize that you have, these apparently they had silent auctions that would take place that Goat Hill Pizza was behind sponsoring as well. So who knows exactly what that means. But I believe there was a movie that Aziz Ansari was in, right? And I think it was a pizza delivery movie that I think Danny McBride was in as well, if
there
I
you
can
go.
remember. And it turns out they did like this public event to promote the film, and Aziz Ansari was actually at Goat Hill Pizza to promote the film. And behind him, I'll see if I can find that picture, because behind him is this unmistakable symbolic right connection to what we've been discussing, which is this pedophile coded language and symbols that are being overly.
Oh yeah, I have it right here. Hold on.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
Fuck, man.
Hmm.
What is this? Oh, what?
So
There
now
you go, right over his
look at,
shoulder.
30 minutes or
yes,
less.
right over his shoulder, but also there, if you can see the, you have the butterflies. That's
the
Project
monarch butterfly.
in my opinion. Yes, and so you have monarch symbolism being involved in this as well, and we all know this is trauma-based mind control in regard to the exploitation of children.
That swirl is on the chest of a little
Right,
girl
that's
as
what-
well.
See, this
Yeah.
is the problem, right, Austin? It's like we're looking at these things and it looks like a conglomeration of like blackmail operatives, between I don't know, Hollywood and politics, but then of course there's that element which is trauma-based mind control, and that bridges immediately into satanic ritual abuse, and it confuses a lot of people who are willing to engage in this conversation, but they want to keep it strictly politics. They can wrap their minds around the idea that you might blackmail an individual in order to have political, influence over them one way or another, or financial influence. Then you're dealing with something different when it comes to the intelligence agencies and MK Ultra, which is supposedly stopped in whatever 1970 something, and people will say that's not even a thing that happens anymore. So that's another barrier to get through. And then once you look into it even further, now there is demonic influence, satanic ritual abuse, and that plugs into military intelligence. It's this giant web that this blackmail operation is only one, almost not small part of. I mean, maybe it's all equal parts, but it is incredibly dark. And unless you're willing to play ball and start to entertain the idea of supernatural presence or an element of the supernatural, you're not gonna, if you can't do that, you can't even have this conversation. And I was pulling up here for a moment Tony Podesta's art. He's collecting all this art, and it's filled with really, really, really horrifying dark imagery, children being abused, murder, the decapitated heads of the victims of Dahmer. I believe it's Dahmer, and he's got it in gold hanging from his ceiling. The decapitated victim of Jeffrey Dahmer is in gold hanging from the ceiling of Tony Podesta. And all of it is just so bizarre. But like I said, as soon as you peel back one layer, there is supernatural, satanic ritual abuse, the fracturing of individuals' minds. Our intelligence agencies, our military intelligence are all involved in this. I think in some ways that's what put this on the back burner for so long. Obviously, I think there was an orchestrated putting it on the back burner, right? This deciphered symbolism comes out 2007, 2016. We have our heyday with Pizzagate. Here we are 10 years later. 10 years later, and we're finally having this conversation in a serious way. And I think it's because that layer of the supernatural really fucks people up. They don't know how to engage with that at all, and they certainly can't do it if they deign to be a serious researcher.
Right. And honestly, man, when it comes, and I believe it was the Arch of Hysteria was the name of the actual Jeffrey Dahmer art piece, right? That was featured in Podesta's art collection. And it was John Podesta basically was the campaign manager, right, for Hillary Clinton in 2016. I believe he was the founder of the George Soros funded Center for American Progress, of course, and served as Bill Clinton's White House chief of staff. So again, long tenured, pedophile occupied government for a reason. So in 1988, John and Tony started the Podesta Group. Yeah, that's the Arch of Hysteria.
A little harrowing. I wasn't sure if I should bring it up, but you could see this thing suspended. There's Tony Podesta's fat ass, and he's got this heart, and his mansion, his home, is a museum.
Oh, there's Ivanka Trump at the bottom there, huh? Admiring this.
Is that her? No, that's Gwyneth Paltrow, who is also very strange, and she's wrapped up in all of
Is
this.
she the one that's selling her pussy candles?
Yeah, she used to have a show called it was something really goofy, but it was about maybe vaginal discharge or something like that. But yeah. I mean, this guy's entire home is a museum. For the horrifying, but specifically of a child molestated nature.
I think it could potentially be even worse than this, and I think there's an additional layer to this, possibly being keeping trophies of your victims. I legitimately believe that this was a part of what they do, and in almost some sort of Dexter fashion, right? Except it's a little bit more sinister, in my opinion, in terms of child sexual abuse. But this was interesting to me because I read through, whenever I covered Pizzagate, there was this life profile, a magazine life profile for Tony Podesta and his home art collection, right? And so I went through each of the pieces that, and it's absolutely disgusting, right? And the individuals who even covered his art collection were shocked, man. They were disgusted in their own right. And so you have obviously the Arch of Hysteria, which gruesomely reflects the arranged pose of the victims of Jeffrey Dahmer, even including the severed heads. Now, then you have Tony Podesta's one of his favorite artists was a British woman by the name of Kim Noble.
Yep. Yeah, I had her pulled up here.
So sad. Kim Noble happens to create trauma-based art while suffering from dissociative identity disorder as a result of being abused in Project Monarch mind control program, which obviously used sexual trauma as a method to fracture the psyche and control the mind. So she creates crude drawings of extreme sexual abuse, mostly of young children. And she herself was viciously sexually assaulted repeatedly between the ages of 1 and 3, and had spent most of her life in and out of mental institutions, basically. And essentially, Tony Podesta was extraordinarily fond of this lesser known artist, right, by the name of Biljana Jurdovic, I believe. And it has some very disturbingly overt images of what can be considered basically the beginnings of child sacrifice and extreme torture. So Jurdovic apparently was one of Tony Podesta's favorite children to abuse, is what the allegations seem to involve, and is a survivor of this very same pedophile network that I think wraps into not only Epstein, but Pizzagate. And as I mentioned, the kosher mob, the kosher mafia, and Roy Cohn's connection. And this is Meyer Lansky. This is a criminal syndicate for generations. And so,
by the way, isn't it crazy that you're talking about this and this guy had a Time magazine piece written on him? Like, look at his art. Isn't that crazy? Look at his art. It's one of these things where, like, they can operate not just in plain sight, but they can amplify. They can put a spotlight on the things that they're doing, and nothing happens.
Nothing. Yeah, it really does show the level of power I think they're wielding in regard to the network itself, and how the blackmail is applied, but also I think just the level of kind of how overrepresented in high profile positions that so many of these prolific predators truly are, right? And that in itself sort of insulates them inherently from any real accountability, right? And I think whenever you just, again, peel back the layers a little bit further, you see this strange connection to, obviously, Tony Podesta was fast friends with Dennis Hastert, right, who was the longest tenured Speaker of the House and was an out and out, I mean, legitimately, he was actually convicted as a pedophile, right? So there's no debate. And Podesta and Hastert did a 3 to 4 month trip to Japan for the People to People Student Ambassador Program. And in the WikiLeaks emails, basically, they still keep in contact despite Hastert's heinous conviction. and tends to be just commonplace and status quo as far as same with Epstein, right? No one seemed
Right.
to distance themselves in any real way.
Right. That was all
And
the way back in 2008, and there's no drying up of Epstein's business relations since 2008 when he was convicted.
and who has been arrested since the DOJ released the files? I mean, it's
Right.
like, yeah, and but
That was kind of the problem with the
They
files.
arrested like Prince Andrew and then let him go.
They let him go. Yeah, they're like,
Mhm.
gotcha. All right, go ahead.
Yeah,
The problem with it was that there was no we weren't seeing things that were evidence in a criminal
They were
case.
seeing emails.
We were just seeing email correspondence and you know, but yeah, nobody was
I mean,
arrested.
Tony Podesta allegedly spent his birthday parties at Comet Ping Pong Pizza, right? So the fact that that was taking
That's
place,
great
and
pizza. I don't understand why you're saying the pizza was good.
yeah, we can get into this strange leaked pizza menu that provided promotional material for their elite pedophile clientele,
Yeah.
and they referred to them as newcomers in the sexually explicit form of the word, and it turns out that obviously, and you had mentioned Edgar Madison Welch. I wanted to at least make a final point in regard to his connections, because this is very strange to me that you have this actor with an IMDb page that lists 3 films produced by Forever Young Productions, right? So just the name of Forever Young Productions should be at face value understandable, in terms of the sinister nature. Yeah. And so his father, Harry Welch Jr., not only owned Forever Young Productions, but also served as executive director for Protect a Child, which is a national nonprofit organization meant to prevent abuse and abduction of children. So he's even
These
reported
always go together, dude.
Mhm.
Always go together. These
Same thing
people
with
that
Laura
are
Silsby.
Yep,
It's like the
serial
Ashton Kutcher
offenders.
thing, right?
Yep, serial offenders will have organizations. They'll be the head of organizations that deign to, or rather feign to be dealing with the very thing that they're doing.
Right. Exactly. And the fact that he had a national security clearance as well from the Department of Defense, what does that have to, I mean,
Like the bill.
the fact that you have basically Edgar Madison Welch going into Comet Ping Pong Pizza after allegedly coming back from Haiti, which is a very interesting story.
Yep.
Mhm.
If you look
And
into Epstein and his he funded a lot of the relief efforts in
Yes,
Haiti, which we all know how
exactly.
that.
That caught my attention instantly as well in the files, because it's too hard to obviously it should reinforce what we already know, unfortunately, and that's essentially what the Beyond Borders charity that was focused on Haiti was intended to sort of set up this in a real way, the structured pipeline of the Clinton Foundation, basically working to end child slavery and prevent violence against women and girls in Haiti, when in reality they get caught trafficking undocumented children in mass. I think it was 33 that Laura Silsby had in her possession, by the way, whenever she was stopped at the border, and Bill Clinton himself came to her, rescue. But yeah,
That's how crazy it is. You just come to a like, I know you got snagged up, but don't worry, we'll come and get you out. By the way, you had mentioned Kim Noble before. We were talking in the context of Tony Podesta's artwork collection, and I have this image here. This is some of Kim Noble's famous artwork that Tony Podesta is so fond of.
The
Here's
fuck is
another
that?
one. These are children in cages being presumably jizzed on. And here's another one. Make of that what you will. So, but it's just like
Oh my
this.
God.
This is John Podesta's brother, and this is the artwork. It's so crazy that they gaslit us into believing that this. Not that I ever believed we were wrong, but that they convinced the sleeping masses that people who were concerned about this sort of thing were pieces of shit, conspiracy theorists that were spiraling out of control and lived in a fantasy realm.
Well, we were spiraling out of control.
And we also were pieces of shit. But look at the artwork on this dude's walls and tell me that we're crazy. And that's exactly what they did.
yeah. And honestly, when you realize that the term Pizzagate itself was legitimately cultivated to undermine the credibility and you know, equate it to, that's what Watergate was coined for in the first
Yeah.
place, right? And so this has been this longstanding tool of deflection that they rely upon. And when it comes to a crescendo in the Pizzagate case, obviously this 28-year-old actor with an IMDb page decides to play out his next role, is the way that I put it in my episode, right? And he became a disturbed conspiracy theorist driven by QAnon to drive to DC with an AR-15 to fire 3 shots that allegedly struck a wall, a desk, and a door. But in reality, it actually damaged the computer hard drive that had that private website that I had mentioned earlier with the promotional material for the pedophile clientele. Now, here's another interesting aspect to it, because if you look up the pictures and the videos from when Edgar's being detained by the authorities, very unusual display of police response, in my opinion, right? Edgar's sitting there, well, he's standing uncuffed, right, while still at the supposed crime scene, and can be seen standing in a very casual pose with his hands on his waist. He would later explain to the cops that he had planned to, quote, self-investigate the conspiracy theory. Another version of the story.
Investigate the conspiracy theory.
Mhm. Now, in another version of the story, Edgar Madison Welch had actually lived in Haiti for a time, only recently coming back before his unusual trip to Comet Ping Pong Pizza. By the
No
way,
relation. Unrelated.
and it turns out there exists obviously this alternative theory that Welch was actually there in order to provide this palatable false flag narrative to the public, all while kind of staving off the need for any sort of real legitimate investigation into the claims being made surrounding human trafficking through these particular businesses. Now, this inherently painted the business owners as the victims of harassment and even potential violence in the minds of the general public. And so, and keep in mind, Edgar Madison Welch, just returning from Haiti, had allegedly been in a hit and run incident, I believe it was, and struck a pedestrian and committed homicide. I mean, legitimately killed the person. And then all of a sudden, weeks later, is at Comet Ping Pong Pizza with an AR-15. It's very interesting to me how these events transpire in the timeline. It feels as if they had leverage over this man, right? Whether he,
they're just moving around.
absolutely. And the fact that he was executed in that strange routine traffic stop, you know, in what, 2025 or 24, I can't remember. It's just, it's a little bit difficult to set any of this aside and act as if it's not entirely directly connected. But I
Especially
think
when it looks like business as usual. You know,
It
like that's
does.
exactly how you'd expect this to go.
exactly. And especially if just imagine a world where someone's considering blowing the whistle, because let's just say they're in maybe they're in a precarious position where they potentially need some sort of leverage on their own right, and are, I mean, like a Robert Maxwell situation where he starts blackmailing the blackmailers, and they're like, look, brother, that's not how this works. You know, your time is up. And
There
I
are
think that's
rules.
exactly. And then you have members of the Mossad, like in SEAL Team 6 uniforms, on a U-boat coming up to your yacht and never to be seen again, right? It's just like, this is it's commonplace at this point. And I think Epstein was just another kind of element to the equation that they needed to tie off a loose end in a real way. And just seeing how kind of Epstein himself, I noticed this strange pattern that just recently came to my attention, and it really just instantly, because there was this ongoing investigation in 2019 in New Mexico into Epstein and Zorro Ranch, and so the Attorney General in New Mexico was basically promised by the Fed, essentially the office, the Attorney's Office, the U.S. Attorney's Office of the Southern District of New York, infiltrated and derailed the investigation, brought it to an end, halted it, and gave false promises to the AG of New Mexico, to all these various investigators who were involved in the ongoing case, who were urging for the property to be legitimately seized, right? Based on this extraordinary amount of information that they had acquired throughout the investigation. So then the U.S. Attorney's Office of the Southern District of New York, which obviously is filled with usual suspects that consistently, they're the ones who covered up the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, who essentially were involved with the Diddy case, right? And so they're just kind of utilized in every way to facilitate a cover-up. And so they promised the Attorney General and the investigators in New Mexico they would layer in all the information and the evidence that they were provided by the New Mexico investigation. But the DOJ never followed through. They never actually engaged in the sort of what's it called when you basically the search warrant, right? They never actually executed the search warrant, which they clearly could have gotten in terms of the evidence just being provided by the New Mexico investigation. And it was all under the precedent that they were interviewing the same witnesses. So this was going to potentially run counter to their ongoing federal investigation into Epstein. So therefore, they needed to halt their investigation because they could have additional witness statements that run counter to that of the federal investigation. And so therefore, they needed to stop. And in reality, they're now blowing the whistle saying they were lied to and that the case itself was entirely ended by design, never to be actually pursued in the future. And they were only given false promises. Meanwhile, there's this new revelation apparently where these YouTubers go to Zorro Ranch just recently, like in the past 2 weeks, and they get shot at by the property manager there.
That's right. And I didn't even look at that because it seemed so retarded that I couldn't.
I wasn't aware.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What do you know about that? Because that seemed to me such obvious bullshit. Not to say that they weren't shot at or that there weren't YouTubers at Zorro Ranch, like none of that stuff. It's just like this is like an op. This is bullshit. What is this? I didn't even want to look at it.
Yeah, so basically you have YouTubers trespassing at Epstein's former Zorro Ranch is what the claims are, and that they were shot at during this time. And they were from Colorado, I believe, trespassing at Jeffrey Epstein's ranch in Santa Fe County, and basically the property manager began to fire shots at them. And so there are 3 young men from Colorado admitted to illegally entering San Rafael Ranch, as it is now known by the new owners, to gather content for a YouTube video. So
what
they
do you think
said
is going on there. That doesn't make any sense to me.
it doesn't, but they said they are lucky to be alive after claiming they were shot at by the ranch's manager. So that is the statement. Now, this is interesting as well because there is an actual video. Oh, hold on. Sorry. There's an actual video segment that was reported by a local New Mexico publication, right? Basically, this affiliate and of, I think, ABC. I'm not entirely sure, but either way, this is very interesting. Just as far as it does feel like it's a little bit, kind of almost like a manufactured narrative in a way, but also I could potentially see some young fuckboys going to Zorro Ranch to try.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that. Like, to me, the same way that you have this shooter in Comet Ping Pong is to almost be like, look, somebody else did it, and maybe don't do that. Don't go to Zorro Ranch. Maybe it's to dissuade other would-be investigators from Zorro Ranch. But I mean, go ahead, let it rip.
Convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein's former Zorro Ranch in rural Santa Fe County has attracted eyes and attention from all over the world. Some have even traveled there, trespassing to explore, despite it being illegal.
Some YouTubers say they are grateful they're not dead after doing that. Here's Jason McGann.
Yeah, that's right, Doug and Shelley. 3 young men from Colorado tell me they admit illegally entering San Rafael Ranch, as it's now known by the new owners, to gather content for a YouTube video. Now they say they're just lucky to be alive after claiming they were shot at by the ranch's manager. Zorro Ranch has caused quite the stir recently, following the release of over 1 million files and the DOJ's new investigation into Jeffrey Epstein's activities there.
House is set to vote on the release of federal files related to Jeffrey Epstein.
New tonight, the DOJ releasing hundreds of thousands of files.
KUET is actively looking through the files released by the DOJ.
It piqued the curiosity of these 3 YouTubers from the Denver area.
What kind of triggered you guys to want to come down to Santa Fe County and check out
the former Zorro Ranch.
I got to go see it myself.
Ali Ofti, Mercius Lewis, and David Wen made the drive to Stanley last week. They admit to jumping the fence on the property with clear no trespassing signs posted to take a look around. They sent us these cell phone video clips they took while approaching the infamous 13,000 square foot mansion located on the private property.
We were just taking videos of like everything outside from the windows.
But shortly after, they say trucks drove up and they ran.
We're like trying to go down the hill at this point. They're like, come back up here.
Mercius became separated from the rest of the group, and he says he saw someone behind him.
Next moment, I see his hand raised. I turn my head.
He says a man fired a gun at him.
I just keep running.
Eventually, all three were detained by staff and turned over to Santa Fe County Sheriff deputies.
We were just glad to make it out, like, alive. And it just like, we just rode home, went back home.
In the police report, the property manager admits to shooting and killing a rattlesnake that morning. However, when an investigator asked him if he fired a gun when the men were caught, he said he would, quote, lawyer up and not answer any more questions. KOAT's legal expert tells us that it's illegal to shoot someone for trespassing unless deadly force is being threatened. The police report says the three men had no weapons. Deputies did look into aggravated assault charges against the property manager. The DA's office found there wasn't enough probable cause to pursue them.
That's basically the gist of it, right?
They took the shot because they're like, yeah, it's illegal to shoot somebody for trespassing, but two of them were black. So that's got to count for something. You know, somebody in the chat did say Luke Rakowski did go to the island, you know, after all this shit went down all those years ago. So, I mean, maybe it's not totally out of the realm of possibilities to be able to do this sort of thing. It just seems so retarded. There's no cover. It's New Mexico, dog. Right. And they're on a hill. They can see you coming. There's only shrubbery, sparse shrubbery and desert. They can see you from just the window casually while having coffee. Like you're not doing this covertly at all. I don't know. Strange. Maybe it is an organic thing that happened there, but it does feel a lot more like the idea that you might dissuade people from doing any sort of investigating, because now the insinuation is like, look, he denied it, but we all know he shot at him. So if you go there, you're going to get shot at.
Right. I definitely do think that at the very least, it would sort of inspire people to stay away and not actually follow through with physically going to the property. But this is all happening while these Epstein victims are basically suing the DOJ. I think they're actually suing Google as well, right? Which I found to be interesting because of this essentially revealing information that was detrimental to the victims and their families. And and also you have survivors suing Les Wexner, right? Who they claim was responsible for funding him. And basically the lawsuit, the allegations within the lawsuit claim Jeffrey Epstein used exactly $200 million from Les Wexner over 20 years to allegedly build his sex trafficking network and commit acts of gender-motivated violence against plaintiffs and other women and children.
$200 million. That's not really a big deal.
But the connection to, just as far as like, you know, the Palm Beach Pete and all this strange shit that's happening.
What do you make of that?
So I do think it's interesting that Epstein did actually have a meeting and basically met with a top face transplant doctor in New York City, and this happened. It was Eduardo Rodriguez, I believe, was the name of the individual, and yeah, it's honestly interesting because when you look into it, and there's a couple of files that reference this meeting, an appointment that he had as well. Then there's an additional layer to it. There was a roadmap that he had personally within the files, right? That basically had these steps in case I get caught, is what it said. And if you go through the steps, then essentially you see have a fall guy, safe house was step 2, and step 3 was plastic surgeon.
Yeah.
Which again,
why wouldn't you have all that money and all those connections?
Right. And if you go, you know, a little bit more through this strange, in case I get caught, a list of notes, he basically goes through not only acquiring a safe house, but meet a criminal lawyer, have a stash of cash ready, how much is enough, wife testimony, accomplice use and law, safe uses of private detectives. Yeah, very interesting stuff in my opinion. Give no advice that aids and abets. I don't know, to actually avoid trackable expenditure, to actually write this down physically to me, it
Yeah.
just seems very strange, but still.
It is strange to write it down. You think you would just, what's wrong with your head? You can't just keep that in there. But there besides the similarities in their appearance, the obvious similarities in their appearance,
Yeah, like he didn't even do anything.
well, he also owned, Epstein, I think, allegedly owned the property that Palm Beach Pete is now taking videos from. It's the exact same backyard. And I think they met at a party in New York, where, obviously Epstein has property out there. But I have this image here. I'm going to bring this up on stage. This is like super uncanny. And I mean, it feels dumb to even suggest they look the same because they look so much the same. But look at the details, his upper lip, the deep groove in his mustache region, the creases between his eyebrows, the markings in his eyebrows, as well as the birthmarks, or I don't know, liver spots, whatever you would call them, on his forehead are identical. I mean, it's kind of like, yeah, get plastic surgery, but like kind of the bare minimum. Just get the bare minimum plastic surgery.
I don't want to be a cat person.
I'd like to look very much the same if that's possible, Doc.
Look, I just think that it's a strange thing to be meeting with these sort of facial reconstruction experts leading up to a prison sentence, and at the very least, it would be, you would think, especially with his resources that were available to him, that you would imagine he would have some sort of just escape plan in a way, right? Which I feel like definitely, if you think about the Tim McVeighs of the world and people such as this who allegedly, even the Jesus Campos, right, the security guard in the Vegas shooting, it's like he goes and does this entirely scripted Ellen show appearance that's owned by the exact same MGMRI that owns the hotel, that the Mandalay Bay where the event took place, and also were technically his bosses. He signs a non-disclosure agreement, right? And he is put up in a penthouse, essentially under protection with security and everything. They had journalists trying to reach him, and they had armed security who turned journalists away, so they couldn't actually get a statement from him. And then he disappears after all of this takes place. And that's a very strange story, but very well could be. And I think it was his former brother-in-law who claimed that, they were all well aware of Stephen Paddock and how many guns he allegedly had, and all of this. But anyway, it turns out, and I believe he actually went to an institution where essentially MK Ultra was institutionalized in a real way, as far as I think Jolly West even conducted experiments and research on behalf of the MK Ultra operation at the institution that Jesus Campos allegedly had to report to after the event took place. So very strange, but when it comes down to this overlapping nature of potentially Epstein even having a connection to Mossad, or not Mossad, but to Pizzagate, right? Which I think is very interesting. There's basically in 1988, right, in February, Jeffrey Epstein allegedly began managing the personal and business finances of Les Wexner. So the very same month that this allegedly takes place, the Wexner Heritage Foundation holds a national fundraising retreat for donors in Palm Beach, and it was titled Models of Ethical Leadership. Do you know who the keynote speaker at this retreat was?
That's very funny. Models of Ethical Leadership is
right.
That's kind of like they did.
Yeah,
they are funny.
Healthcare.
They are funny.
Right?
Absolutely. Now, who would you believe the keynote speaker at this retreat would have been?
Hillary Clinton.
Benjamin Netanyahu.
Get the fuck out. Come on, dude.
Yeah, man.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. So this is
love
just...
that. See, that's the thing, is they do all this so openly. It is almost to mock you. It's like, look, we don't have to hide anything at all. Even the Palm Beach Pete thing is kind of like, Tony Podesta's art in Time magazine, or Bill Clinton showing up to, get a child trafficker off the hook in a very obvious way. There's no obfuscation. That's another one where they go, not only will we not hide it, let's make it how about the ethical?
Let's make it brazen.
Ethical world leaders. What was it called?
Hold on, let me find it again because it's the perfect reference point. Honestly, it was called the Models of Ethical Leadership.
You know how funny that is, dude? That's like if we were getting together to kind of like think of a funny name for an event, and I was like, what about like Brohemy? And we go, oh, that's so funny, dude. Like, that's how that was created. That's how that was created. A bunch of dudes sat in a room, and when they were done drinking and fucking kids, they started workshopping some silly ideas for the name of their event. And they said, no, there's no way people are not. You can't name it that. And then we go, no, what? We fucking can name it that. Let's name it
Right.
that.
Exactly. And I found this. So there's a letter from in the DOJ files for the Epstein files, and it basically connects to Julian Assange, right? And the New Age family cult that was ran by right, as far as Ann Hamilton Byrne was the New Age cult leader it was called the Family. And it was these platinum blonde children, right? They dyed their hair, they dressed them all alike, and they were allegedly going to be like this. I believe they were being sort of conditioned, in a strange way to become a part of the master race of this new age. Yeah, it's a very strange kind of philosophy.
Atlantean shit.
Oh, it's crazy stuff, and honestly, it's the DOJ letter specifically references like detailed abuse that Julian Assange allegedly endured as a child, which makes a lot of sense, honestly, unfortunately. But in terms of their goals and philosophy and behind the practices of the group, they not only, so it was, basically the New Age thought behind it was they would become a part of the master race after Armageddon transpired, is basically what the background was.
Nice.
But they utilized LSD, right? In terms of, I think over 30 children were drugged with LSD, and they basically, well, we'll get into that in a moment, because I really wanted to actually first tell you guys about this fascinating connection, because I had mentioned when we talked about Hitler, right, and all those fascinating kind of Hitler mind control, the voice and pace walk, right, that he referred to as Providence. Yeah. So there's an additional layer to this that I saw within the Epstein files, and it seems to come through an email in the context of Ariane de Rothschild, right, who is communicating with Epstein. Now, can I go take a piss real quick, and then I'll be back, and I can actually think through it. Okay, cool. I'll be right back.
Can't concentrate if you're
loaded with piss.
If you're filled with piss. Yeah, as we were talking earlier, though, I was going through, and I don't really want to bring it up, the Podesta art, but that shit it's harrowing. You know what's something interesting that I found while he was talking? This character Edgar Madison Welsh, the guy who shoots up Comet Ping Pong, he was also an actor.
Huh.
Isn't that funny? Edgar Madison Welsh has an IMDb, and he's got a couple of films under his belt. And I don't know, to me, that just strikes me as crisis actor kind of a deal. I mean,
doesn't that suck? You could be cast into you could be central casting from there, or you could be a fucking astronaut.
Yeah.
They're like, nope. Pizza shooter.
Pizza shooter, dude. Could have been
pizza
anything.
Shooter.
Either that, or you go through.
Fuck, man, this isn't me.
Yeah, or you go through a couple of D-list films, and you realize that this isn't going to work out for you, and so you might as well, shoot up a pizza shop and then die by cop, suicide by cop. But it's just funny because I think that kind of a thing shows itself often too. You see that archetype of struggling actor all the time. They'll do almost anything. Fucking kid. I think there's a level of suggestibility that comes under that as well. Austin, I was just talking about how he's already filling back up for the next one. He's got no more. I was talking about how Edgar Madison Welsh seems to have a modest IMDb page where he was an actor in some D-list films, which I think is probably useful if you're looking for a patsy to go on a dramatic, what would you call it? Sort of an escapade, and shoot up Comet Ping Pong and cause a big scene. Maybe
Exactly.
if you have a bunch of patsies you can choose from, the one with a little bit of acting chops might be good.
100%. And especially just knowing that his father ran Forever Young Productions. I mean, that alone is a huge issue, in my opinion. Just the name in itself is very revealing. But I think people they're just not aware enough of this long-standing technique of employing hypnotic states, right? In at least hypnotic type states for thousands of years, in my opinion, and throughout various cultures and religions. This basically has been deployed and utilized at the highest levels for that very purpose of influence and mind control and social engineering. So, in my opinion, I mean, hypnosis is what was originally referred to as, basically in the past, is casting a spell. I think, honestly, and or even the trance or altered states of consciousness of mystics, right? And which I think the Kabbalah, right, Jewish mysticism, this is very much, I think, that's what the chaos magic of the character of Christ sort of was, and even redefining anti-Semitism as this viable weapon to, clearly violate the First Amendment. That in itself is a form of chaos magic, and it's fascinating that people aren't more aware of this strange sort of technique that's relied upon. I looked through chaos magic and kind of talked about it last night a little bit, because there's two different techniques known as like magical paradigm shifting, and a cut up technique is what it's referred to. And it's basically revelation of the method, which is just, to me, it applies so heavily, and is basically where I think the most effective form of social engineering takes place, and influencing, through pop culture. It just has a vast, extraordinary influence on the average individual of the general public, right?
They get hung up if you say the idea that like spells and magic are real, but if you look at spell casting as casting illusions, and if you really believe in that notion of perception is reality, well, whoever has the ability to create the perceived reality, it doesn't matter if it's actual reality, it's a layer that's laid over reality, and it is what the individual perceives as the truth. Well, then you have effectively been a victim of spell casting. And I think that it does go well beyond that. I think that there is a spiritual realm, and the implications go a lot further than just convincing you of a false reality. But if that's all you can deal with, then sit right there and realize, like, yeah, everything is a gigantic show. The media and these movers and shakers on the world stage are all orchestrating a mass illusion that is laid over, it's superimposed over reality. And if you don't think if you can't call that spellcasting, I don't know what the fuck else to call it. But at least in that sense, in that materialistic paradigm sense, everybody should be able to understand and grasp and deal with the reality of the situation, which is where we're all being victims of spellcasting.
Right. And I think that it's really what I reference as the ongoing mind war. It truly does apply. I mean, Mind War and the Psychology of Victory, I believe, is the name of the book by Paulie Vallely and Michael Aquino, who I believe was a major prominent figure in kind of setting up the systematic entrenchment of Project Monarch, and then basically managing it throughout the domestic U.S. for quite some time. And that's according to many different individual child victims who have unfortunately exposed a lot of this, right, as victim witnesses, like a Paul Bonassi, an individual from the Franklin scandal. But as far as just, I had mentioned that strange, I believe there's a possibility, and people legitimately went on the record claiming as much, that Hitler was possibly possessed by a demon as a medium, which I found to be very interesting. So it's an additional layer to the mind control at Tavistock. Is they legitimately, we're talking, descriptions from multiple sources, right, who were even close with Hitler, and had no reason to sort of manufacture this out of whole cloth as a narrative, and even in a critical fashion, unless they were trying to distance themselves, right, from the Führer or the consequences of the war.
Well,
but
we just did an episode with Dr. Heather Lynn, which should be airing, pretty soon in a week or so. And she was just laying out all the evidence for there's no shortage all the way back to antiquity of kings and people in influence having this external influence, something whispering in their ear, and all these different cultures called it a different thing. But you imagine if you could just entertain the idea that there is a spiritual realm and that it interacts and it has a vested interest in the happenings, the comings and goings of the physical realm, it would of course want to influence the most influential people. Hitler is no exception. And you could just, it's like when you hear Hitler might have had a demon whispering in his ear, it sounds very bombastic. You just remove Hitler and you can replace it with any world leader all the way back to antiquity, and there's going to be some claim that that's the case. You could choose to ignore that, or you could recognize that it's a real phenomenon that takes place. It's a reality of the realm that we inhabit.
Exactly. But I thought that the reference points, as far as the source material and the individual sources that were providing these statements, is what really appealed to me the most, because it made it seem far more worthwhile and considering it honestly, right? And so there was basically the original reference that caught my eye was this. It was called Hitler Speaks, and it was an author by the name of Erman Rausching, which is a former Nazi who allegedly broke with the Third Reich before he published several books denouncing Hitler, and he himself suggests that Hitler was a medium transformed by powers that, quote, are something that is outside their true personality, visitors. The medium is possessed. Once the crisis is past, they fall back again into mediocrity. It was in this way, beyond any doubt, that Hitler was possessed by forces outside himself, almost demonic forces, which the individual named Hitler was only the temporary vehicle. That's just one reference, right? Again, you could take that in more of a, you don't necessarily have to internalize that as fact or anything, but then you have additional statements like Gregor Strasser, who is another former member of the Nazi Party. He says, quote, listening to Hitler, one suddenly has a vision of one who will lead mankind to glory. A light appears in a dark window. A gentleman with a comic little mustache turns into an archangel, right? Then the archangel flies away, and there is Hitler sitting down, bathed in sweat with glassy eyes. Now you have another author.
He's saying that's what it was like to bear witness to Hitler giving these speeches, is afterwards it's like he just nutted and now he's just a sweaty mess and the archangel has left him.
He's just the husk.
Metatron is no longer with him. Man, that's crazy.
Very interesting. They're legitimately describing him as a vehicle, a medium, right? And right. I find that fascinating. And you had a French author named Robert Bouchez who remarks, I looked into his eyes, the eyes of a medium in a trance. Sometimes there seemed to be a sort of ectoplasm. The speaker's body seemed to be inhabited by something, fluid. Afterwards, he shrank again into insignificance. This is the exact same story, right?
That's the exact same thing.
Looking small and even vulgar. He seemed exhausted, right? He seemed exhausted. His batteries run down. Francois Poncet, ambassador from France to Nazi Germany, he reported, he entered into a sort of mediumistic trance. The expression on his face was ecstatic. In July 1919, working as an intelligence agent of the Reichswehr, less than a year after his release from hospitalization from hysterical blindness and pacewalk, Hitler had infiltrated the DAP. And this is when, before Hitler came,
hysterical blindness.
The account of the Tool Society, but that was allegedly at Pacewalk, is when he was hypnotized. Dr. Edmund Forster, and basically when the Germans invaded, right? I think it was. Hold on, let me find where he was actually institutionalized, because it is so fascinating. And I know Hitler and Pacewalk is just like, it's a very expensive book as well, because I think honestly, in many of these cases, you'll find a book worth $500, right? And it seems to be this interesting reoccurrence in terms of withholding information that is vital to restructuring your worldview, you know, and honestly, if they can be taken, the more they can be taken seriously as source material, the less likely they will be available publicly in
Right.
some sort of yeah. It's a sad situation we find ourselves
Crazy,
in.
though. What was that? That was 4. Was that 3 or 4 accounts, Austin, of basically the same exact thing in slightly different language?
It was at least 4. I think I mentioned 4 for sure. But
That's it over and over again. Everything that we
It's
look
a-
into is like it's channeling. They're channeling entities.
It's a weird one 'cause it can go all the way up to Hitler causing a genocide, if some people believe that, all the way down to, like, I've heard the same story to about Razor Ramon, like Scott Hall. I know.
Oh
It's,
yeah.
as you described it when
They're kind of actors, right?
no, he's a wrestler.
No, but I'm saying they're sort of actors, and you
Yeah.
have all of these stories across actors being like they're possessed by something, and they'll say it too, but it's
Well-
okay when they say it because wow, the creative mind of the actor is something to behold.
The people around him would say that when it was time for him to come out into the ring, he's Razor Ramon, and they're like, he's like a god. You know, the dude is like big. He's got the fucking toothpick.
it's like split
and-
personality. It legitimately is. Yeah.
And once he's done wrestling, like just regular life, they're like, yo, he shrinks down. He like he's not the same dude. I'm like, yeah, they're turning something on or inviting something in and becoming this other personality.
Philosophy
common.
of the vampire, my friend. I think
Yeah.
that is honestly real. And the more you are willing to become this vessel, this potential medium, let's say, right? And just to be embodied by an external force, you know, that I legitimately think this is something that people should take more seriously, you know, and it's unfortunate that it's kind of been you know, in a very real way, just I think conflated, right, in order to dismiss any sort of avenue of honest consideration as far as this possibility. And
Well,
and,
there's no honest dialogue around what's happening. It's not even obfuscated. It is very public, and it happens across so many different musicians, you know, wrestlers in this instance.
Even man, what's the Ron Coleman? You guys know that guy? He's a
Ron Coleman, is he
big-
black dude?
big black dude.
Yeah.
He was like Mr. Olympia a bunch of times. Because now all these this
Bro,
is
think
like,
about The Rock.
it's low level stuff, but well, The Rock has something coming as well. But Ron Coleman, like huge dude, and now he's walking with those like the canes that you know, the crutches around your arm, and his legs don't work.
Yeah.
And they had asked him at one point, they're like, hey, is it worth it? Like, you did all this to your body, and he told him, he was like, you're just a dude. You're like a regular guy all the time. He's like, I got to live like a god.
Yeah.
I was a god for like a short amount of time, and he's like, I wouldn't trade it. And the guy lives in hell. His back is all fucked up.
But
He
that's the
can't
thing
walk.
is, you know,
But so he's aware of that trade-off is what
Yeah.
I'm saying. And it's just
and
interesting
he'll
that,
do it. Sounds like he'd do it again.
yeah, so Hitler is deflated afterward. There is a toll, and they're aware of
But that's
the
so
cost.
what Austin's saying is like people don't seriously consider this idea of channeling.
We
or
look at it
being
all the
embodied.
time.
But that's the thing, right? Is like another example, you know, Palm Beach Pete. It's right in front of our face. They're doing it and they're entertaining us with it. It's the most successful form of media, bar none. Whatever industry, you know, whatever money the industry that is Hollywood generates probably is I don't know what to compare it to. The amount of money and adoration, attention, whatever that Hollywood has garnered is insane. You probably couldn't compare it to anything else. And that is the modality. The modality is channeling. And so we see it all the time. It's constant right in front of our face in every single thing that we look at, every movie, every music video, everything. But nobody thinks about it. Ron Coleman. Yeah. Nobody thinks about it. Nobody talks about it.
This is like a staggering example of that, of the actual price, the payoff. And I know, you know, we could
Still kinda
rationalize that
jacked.
away physically and all that. Well, yeah, he was doing a bunch of steroids, but I think that all plays into it, man.
Yeah.
It's like there's a deal being made there
That spirit will destroy that vessel
every time.
every time, right? Like if you just let it live there alone, that's why they all look like shit after a while. But yeah, I just think it's crazy that nobody serious believes in channeling, but it's what everybody's watching.
Honestly, and and when Honestly, man, when it comes down to it, as far as these extraordinary resources that offer this strange alternative reality in terms of Hitler and this obvious, I take it very seriously as far as just I think it was even Rudolf Hess at the Nuremberg trials, right? And I'll never forget this because basically they cut his mic, right? He makes a statement where he claims that all of the highest levels of as far as the all of the most prominent figures in the highest levels of the Third Reich in Nazi Germany were under mind control, right? And so when he made that statement, they cut his mic at the Nuremberg trials. And that in itself is so revealing. And I just thought, of course, you could imagine a world where that would potentially be the case, right? Where they have these strategic assets in place and they position them over time, utilizing these fraternal organizations of powerful influence to legitimately destabilize Germany and pave the way for the Tool Society to overthrow, commit an assassination, overthrow the current paradigm of power, and then implement this new age philosophy, which they hope to obviously I think, create the precedent and pretext for a potential, structured system in the future, right, going forward. And this is what I view the overthrow of German sovereignty in a real way, leading up to World War II, following World War I. I mean, it was blatant and overt as far as the level of just in terms of the average German citizen and kind of the unfortunate position they were in leading up to World War II, and which again, it sort of allowed for this desperation within the common people in Germany who were so desperate for a savior, and that obviously led to the Aryan God King, which was sort of I think the Aryan Christ figure that they tried to resurrect in the form of Adolf Hitler, which obviously that was a construction, that was a constructed sort of in a real way, not only personality but a constructed figure in general as far as what it would represent on the world stage, and then how they could utilize that and exploit it for generations to come. And that's why I see how just anti-Semitism being exploited at this moment is such a clear and obvious issue, and is going to only lead us into this more dystopian direction of totalitarianism that is going to shackle our ability to push back and hold power accountable, because we will be forced into this new kind of framework of taboo language that we're not allowed to use. Otherwise, we'll endure these overwhelming consequences that could legitimately undermine our ability to just obviously it would completely destroy any sort of content creator's path forward as far as an ability to profit, let alone have an
Get your
effect.
head cut off, right? I mean, that's the idea of the Noahide laws.
Exactly. And that
you-
came to fruition. I'm
I
sorry,
was
the
just gonna
only
say there was this moment too in because you just mentioned it, and it's this kind of combination. They did the strongman ploy on us again recently, right? That's kind of how Trump got his second term. Is I think it was a much shorter version, like kind of a burst that was facilitated by social media. So I think it was a lot faster. You didn't have to have this slow boil like you saw in Germany. But we were subjected to the same thing. We're underneath this cultural and political climate that is despicable, and the underbelly of people that are willing to speak out about it start, uttering this kind of longing for a Hitler character. And I think it's even fascinating that we saw an unironic rise in Hitler admiration and Nazi sympathizing. And that is in part facilitated by, we talked about this in the last episode, Top, when you call everybody a Nazi, eventually people get fed up with that kind of bullshit and they start going like, yeah, Nazis are based, right? But like that is happening at the same time that there's this desire for a strong man, and it's all around the same time where Trump is about to start running for office again. And I'm like, oh yeah, they did it again. They did it in a much shorter burst and arguably more potently because they had the social media to help facilitate this process. And now here we are with all this anti-Semitism crap. It's like we're victimized by the same shit on a loop.
and they've very much sophisticated the ability to properly and effectively position a populist candidate. Like they just sort of know exactly which buttons to push to cause that over emotional knee jerk reaction in the public sentiment, and that lands the vast majority of people on one side or the other of the political paradigm, and that that strange duality, which the black hat, white hat over simplification narrative always seems to undermine anyone's critical thinking skills and their ability to again,
Feels like we deserve it.
a little bit, yeah.
I enjoy the current argument going on Twitter right now, where Dave Smith is saying that Republicans deserve to lose, and the implication would be then Democrats win. And I'm just watching it, and then everybody's fighting over it. They're like, "This guy's a communist," and it's like, well, technically he's right. I mean, you should be punished for your actions, but the more stunning point on the other side of that is that, like, yeah, Democrats then win. There is no other choice, and they have proven to be completely awful. So we're once again put in a situation where me myself, if I look at this and let's say Trump was running again, I would go preferable to the alternative still, you know?
Yeah.
And not like if we had gun to head and I have to vote, is it going to be, you know, what they did to me during COVID, which is also, you know, Trump put that into effect, but realistically, like, Democrat policies were pushing that insanity.
There's
that
a
made
lot
me
that
lose
I'm
my
willing
mind.
to endure if you don't trans my kid.
Yeah, that's
Right.
the thing. Yeah, I'm willing to endure quite a bit, and they are testing exactly how much. They're like, what if we killed every Gazan over here? What if we did
Right.
World War III? And I'm like,
World War III?
just keep the supermarkets open.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Don't make me put that stupid fucking thing on my face.
I know it sounds very normy, but this is the actual realistic choice that we're being.
Really, the position that we
proposition.
find ourselves in is like, you know, you stand up and you talk about these things, you get on platforms like this and you oh, this is fucked up. Look at the systems that are against us. Look at the cycles that we're stuck in. Look at the false dichotomies that they're funneling us into. And then eventually you look around and you go, doesn't seem to matter how loud this gets. Everybody wants to be a brainwashed faggot.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden it's like it's almost like a villain arc where you go like, fuck it, rape him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, God.
Rape him.
See, that's what happened with Nick Fuentes, right? Is basically you had that interesting sort of reaction in regard to him just kind of manufacturing merch, so that with the Epstein sweater and shit like that, right? Where he's basically saying Epstein's based, and that was, in my opinion. Now, I don't necessarily know exactly what to think about Nick Fuentes, other than he falls into the category of the influencer industrial complex in my mind. And I feel like his rise to prominence has been very much by design, manufactured to very much represent this subset, this group within modern society, these interesting kind of fleeing minds, right, from the original paradigm that are kind of reacting overwhelmingly to just the most sinister nature of the establishment. But now they're being kind of it really feels like corralled back into the concept of allowable opinion. And so this will inevitably ruffle feathers as far as people having. Now, clearly, I think this is a rebrand in a real way to kind of get people to actually almost turn a blind eye to the sinister nature of the Epstein files, and just understanding how inundated Trump legitimately has to have been, as far as his mentor being Roy Cohn. We can tie it back all the way to Casino Royale International. This is just, when it boils down to where's my Roy Cohn, and the fact that you're acquiring sexual blackmail, essentially property, right, through Adnan Khashoggi's yacht and the same hotel that Roy Cohn used for the Blue Suite parties. I mean, this is undeniable at this point that Trump potentially is probably drenched in understanding the sophisticated techniques of sexual blackmail. And so to imagine him potentially not being involved at the highest levels of the prominent members of the network, then I think we're just, unfortunately, we're trying to maybe oversimplify the reality of the threat we truly are facing. And I think there's in my opinion, there's no real alternative that appeals to me more. As much as I do understand what you're saying, because I appreciate the value of like Trump removing the naive, vulnerable mask from so many people's eyes, right? That veil, I should say, from so many people's eyes, where now they're willing to address power for what it is occasionally, but it's only when it's self-serving. And that's where I find the ideological prison a real problem.
I'm just gonna keep it real with you, with all you niggas right here, right now.
Okay.
Okay. Preach. They're all gonna fuck kids. That's number one.
That's right.
Right.
But
some of them are going to be gentler.
No.
Okay.
I brought a laser machine that I was able to write off on my taxes.
Okay.
On its in its entirety.
Right.
So that I have to pay them a little. That's where we're at.
There's a difference in
No,
policy.
that's not where we're at.
That's exactly where
That's
we're
not
at.
where we're at, because
Where we're at is like, this is a slight benefit, and I get to keep probably another $300 of my money instead of giving it to these guys who are going to fuck kids. I can give that
That's
money to
if
other
we-
guys who are going to fuck kids. And it's like, that's the situation I feel like I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm having fun with it,
well, no, you have to have fun.
but
That's if we
that's
only
what's
existed. That's
happening
if,
right now.
if the reality of the situation was we do exist in a material paradigm, then that would be. But that's not, because we talked about it already. The entire backdrop to this thing is supernatural. People don't want to cross that line and have that conversation because they don't know how to fucking deal with it.
No, but we're there. We're in the
Well, I was gonna say, if we're in the supernatural, you
Well-
don't put your faith in this Jew or that Jew.
Well, no, I don't put my faith in it. I just be
It's
like,
a different Jew.
that Jew is gonna. He's saying he's gonna steal less from me now,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, oh, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe you know what? I'm a bad person.
Well, I don't vote. I don't give. I've never voted in my life, so I don't give a fuck. I'm not going to engage with the system. I'm going to stand on the sidelines and call it gay.
Right.
And I'm going to try to have fun with it, because I believe that there is a spiritual realm, and we're being tricked into believing that this, physical realm is all that there is. And
Yeah, but now there's two genders again.
well, that's the thing.
Isn't that fun?
There always has
Didn't
been.
you want that?
There always has been.
You
What's
see?
that fucking meme with the astronaut and
always
the gun?
has been.
Always has been.
Right,
Oh
but
my
now
God.
But now we get to say it. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like these are the things that matter to me. If we're gonna play this
I
game,
do like that we can say it. Yeah.
yeah, we're gonna play the game. Everyone's playing this fucking game where like, all right, there's 72 gen, maybe there's 2, maybe there's 72. I'm like, I'm gonna press the button that says 2.
You know what?
God strike me down.
Me, you, and Austin, we're all playing a game, and the end point of our game is, can we say this until our fucking heads roll?
Yeah,
like
pretty
that's
much.
kind of where this goes, is like, can we say this until the fucking window closes and you're not allowed to say it? Then can we keep saying it until they cut our fucking heads off?
Yeah.
Right. And if you see what's happening in Canada, right, you saw that hilarious connection to the new super strong password that just dropped, right? That was my favorite sort of description
what
of what.
the acronym? It was crazy. It was 57
So,
letters.
Check it out. Hey man, they provided $0 of public funding to address the ongoing genocide of MMIWG2S LGBTQQIA+.
Oh, shit, that felt like I just got fucking Kamehameha. That's so crazy, bro. By the way, that entire speech was delivered by a panel that looked like the fucking Galactic Federation of Light. Like there's a Pleiadian in the back. This is one of those avian alien type of dude. You see the red alien in the background.
Gold dust in the
That's
corner.
literally the wrestler Goldust. That's fucking crazy, man. That's
It
crazy. Yeah. This
Yep.
that's kind of the best. I also look at that and I go, that's kind of the best.
I know, but the thing is, it does that. I'm just, to be honest, that takes more of a mental toll on me.
Yeah.
It took more of a mental toll than the shit that's happening now. Now it's like I'm aggravated by it.
Yeah.
I'm just being honest with you guys.
I don't know. I have a tranny on the lawn of the White House with his boy tits out.
Yeah.
I go, that's kind of good. I kind of like that.
I don't know. Yeah,
I
don't
don't
know.
like when they fuck the kids, and I don't like when they trans.
They're
going to
do that anyway.
but they're gonna do that anyway. Well, they might not trans them anymore.
So
They
I guess
might
the
just
question
fuck
is,
them.
you gonna press the button to say a little bit less of that?
No, I'm not gonna push any buttons. I'm gonna go, this doesn't fucking matter. The only thing that matters is calling it gay and retarded. And saying it as loud as you can, because God wants to know if you're going to stick to the truth to such a degree that they're going to cut your head off. And then will you still keep saying it right as the guillotine drops?
I'm gonna do both.
No, I legitimately, just me personally, like I'm just exhausted with every 4 years, everyone essentially being convinced that it's the most important election of our
It's so
lifetime. And
funny how everybody gets convinced every single fucking time.
it's fascinating. And in reality, I think it's just the true underlying power structure is just far too complicated for most of the general public to even comprehend, honestly. And but it leads to people basically just viciously and violently almost defending these political puppets, right? These
Well, you know what,
actors who
Austin? I don't
Mhm.
think that it's too complicated for them to understand because I'm an idiot and I understand it. I think the real tragedy that they're committing is that they don't want to understand it. And when you willingly choose to not learn the truth, know the truth, believe the truth, you're a faggot of monumental
You're
proportions.
dancing with the devil at the very
Yeah,
least.
dude. And it's like, dude,
Yeah.
I'm a fucking idiot. I'm a moron. I'm a high school dropout. I get what's going on. And the only difference between me and somebody else is that I'm willing to see it. I'm willing to look at it and go, okay, if you're not willing
There's
to,
a lot of smart high school dropouts.
touche.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie to you, never stepped a single foot on a megalithic structure. And I'm gonna leave that right there. Okay.
Well, you're a piece
But
of shit for that.
all I'm saying is it's not like this information is beyond our grasp. It is the willingness
You're totally right.
to
Yeah.
abstain from loving the truth.
I think it's a matter of programming as well, and rejecting your programming through the obvious conditioning that all of us have experienced from day one inherently through the public education system at the very least. I mean, I'm very blessed that I sort of bucked the trend. I bucked the system from the beginning, and it inherently felt unethical. It didn't feel like the structure of it in general was going to lead to any real value as far as education is concerned. Like, it's mass indoctrination, right? That is what public education truly is. And understanding the Prussian model, it's undeniable, right? They were conscripting the public, the peasant class, into this structured system to where they would be overwhelmingly emotionally willing enough to sacrifice their own lives for the system and the structured establishment. And in reality, man, we're just kind of like, this is something that I'm dealing with personally because I have, obviously within the context of my own family, right? It's you have one side who views the character of Christ as, I told you he was the fucking Antichrist, right? And then the other side of the spectrum is turning a blind eye to $7 gas prices in California and just trying to
It's rough out there, dog, huh?
Bro,
it's
I
tough,
heard in
buddy.
some places in California, it's 20 something.
Really?
20 something. I don't know if it's like LA or some shit like that, but
I know, like Vegas, when I was in Vegas, it was like gas prices were probably $3.50 in Florida. In Vegas, they were like 5 something. So I
That's
don't know what the hell's
crazy.
going on over there.
It's crazy. And it's something that, I mean, again, I think the closure of the strait in its own right was an act of deliberate economic warfare, right? I think that, we're blockading the blockade, bro. Like, what strategy are we talking about here? It's so obvious that this was a designed kind of consequence, right? And I think it was, I mentioned, like, past couple weeks, I saw Catherine Austin Fitts, right, who came out with an interesting statement on the closure of the strait. And if you remember, it was over this past week, you had Trump actually post world's most powerful reset, right? And I thought, interesting language, my friend, right? I love the fact that they hang themselves by their own language so often. It's what I love to focus on most of all because they're so overconfident. And that will be their downfall at a certain point. And thank God for that. But the fact that Catherine Austin Fitts legitimately claims the shutdown of the strait was not only an act of deliberate economic warfare, but designed to fracture the global food economy, energy networks, and to set the stage for basically worldwide COVID 2.0 style lockdowns. And that, it will be more in the line of combating, these energy shortages and all of these, which are happening by design. It's a matter of consequence in terms of the policy. And she says ultimately the aim is to entirely destabilize the global economy, cripple supply chains, push the world toward famine, all to advance the control grid and depopulation agenda. That's what we're dealing with. This, in my mind, we have this sort of international private intelligence network that's been strategically designed by the very economic hitmen and power brokers, right? That truly, seemingly are possessed, right, with this sort of Malthusian kind of transhumanist notion of population control, or which is in its own right just a rebranded version of the modern theory of eugenics, right? And so when you begin to realize that Agenda 2030 is a fact of life, right, and we need to finally get to a position where we begin to anticipate the next move, right, and stop just. We have to be able to defend ourselves against the very social engineers and kind of war planners, right? Psychological warfare planners, because we have to be able to sort of force them to improvise, I think is the best we can do. And if we stay plugged in enough and objective enough, right? Because my ultimate goal is to opt out. I'm tired of feeling complicit. Even though I understand my taxpayer dollars finance this, that doesn't mean I necessarily agree, right? And so clearly in an ethical world, you would have a voluntarist system at the very least where I could decide where my taxpayer dollars go in an itemized sort of way. And whatever I'm ethically, aligned with, I could finance, right? Personally as a taxpayer. But that's an ethical world that we do not live in, right? So unfortunately, we're all complicit, and we're all effectively facilitating the dystopian totalitarian agenda at large. And it doesn't matter. It's despite the whichever party, right, political party is in office, the pendulum swings, and each side accomplishes what the other cannot in a very dystopian way. So obviously, Trump becomes President Bumpstock. Right, Trump becomes President Bumpstock during the Vegas shooting, and he starts passing gun legislation that would make Obama blush, right? And this is just the name of the game. And
Trump is the father of the vaccine, and then he passes the ball off to Biden, and then everybody gets to look at Biden like he's the guy that did all this. It's like, this is left hand, right hand path shit. It's the same thing back and forth. They're just passing the ball, and each time it's passed, a little bit more ground is gained, and we sit here going like, no, my guy. I think you're right, though, in the sense of like trying to force them into a position where they have to improvise because they're getting caught so rapidly. But I think in order for that to happen, it needs to become a lot more egregious. And I do anticipate, good news is, it is going to get a lot more egregious, in my opinion, just given the trend, the exponential growth in how willing they are.
Let me ask you
to run the ball down the field and allow us to see everything they're doing.
When the lottery is like $5 billion,
Epstein wins it.
Well, yeah, okay, but you don't take $1 and be like, let's see. Nobody, never, not once.
I haven't done it. I've done it before. It's been years.
Because I've been doing that. Yeah. It's not. I'm not going out of my way, but if I'm there and I'd be like, maybe. Here's it. Like whatever.
Have $1.
That's just what I feel like. It's just how I feel like with this entire thing. Like I know which way it's going.
I don't know who they would give us next. That would be.
I'm in for it because I'm in for the ride.
They're gonna do it again, right? They're gonna give us somebody. Like it happens every 4 years. They'll give us somebody.
I hope it goes the Tucker Carlson route because I think that
would be fun.
It's a new unexplored type of Christianity, right wing, neo right wing idealism. Yeah,
I feel like they have to be Peter Thiel approved at the very least, right? Like we have the Thiel panopticon or something,
right.
Is essentially what's happening, and these various power brokers who are implementing this dystopian agenda are all sort of in that realm of influence, right? As far as in that strange environment with these very influential figures behind the scenes, the unelected bureaucrats, so to speak. And I just think by now we should all just be able to agree on the fact that you and your family are essentially despised by the ruling class, right? And this is something that I feel as if we share a common enemy. It's I've said it many times, the art of war, and that's my ultimate Jews. But yeah, no, I mean, it is my ultimate concern though, is that people are unaware of the fact that this has nothing to do with ideology, as far as in the public sort of concept of these ideologies that are much more popular in commonplace and in our current culture. It's really just sort of this surface level interpretation of the power structure, and that's where until you are able to see past that and realize that this common enemy is necessitating the exact same agenda forward, then and only then can we sort of identify the true power brokers from the political puppets that are obviously facilitating the agenda. But
I got to tell you, I think it might get, because we've kind of seen it all, and I think our next ploy, it might be sooner than we think. We might actually get fake and gay alien leader or chimeric animatronic AI leader.
yeah, the AI.
That was last year.
Was that last
Biden.
year? Oh yeah, that's right. Well, Biden turned into a robot.
No.
You think he started off as a robot right from the jump?
Well, there were a couple of them. This like 9. I
Yeah.
think there was 9 of them.
No, there were definitely a few different versions of Biden floating around.
7-foot tall Biden.
Mhm.
But we were talking about it recently. The gate on the
Strong
Tesla
Biden.
robots is the exact same.
Oh, I saw
gate
that clip.
on Joe Biden. It's fucking insane. Like
It is
it's
identical.
identical.
Right. I saw that video of that clip of you guys with Toad. It was identical as far as there's no way. But yeah, I don't know. It's always interesting to me what will come next, right? And what we should anticipate, because I do feel like they've been conditioning the public to accept an AOC presidency in the future. That potentially is on the table. Now,
She's
I'm
got
not saying
giant tits.
yeah, and that
It could
appeals
work.
enough to yeah, that's appealing enough to a lot of people, I guess. But
I can
no,
be convinced. Oh, I'm sorry.
right.
You know
Look,
what's crazy? At what point did Hillary Clinton become like
A crone.
no, not a crone? I remember like seeing photos of her throughout her life and being like, man, she's always been a
We just
disgusting little
discussed-
goblin.
No, I mean she was all right. She was
No,
okay.
I don't think that used to be the case. 5 years ago, if you looked up young Hillary Clinton, you wouldn't have said would. And then something happened, and the pictures hit the internet again recently, and suddenly the overwhelming, response was would.
Oh, we're talking about Mandela effects.
I think it's a Mandela effect. I think she was always an unfuckable crone, even when she was younger. And then something happened in the last 6 months, and her pictures hit the internet again. And she also made an appearance. It might have been the deposition, the Epstein deposition. And suddenly it was like, wait a second, what's going on here? Is would? Yeah, would. Well, and I'm like, wait, no, I don't remember that. I specifically remember seeing young Hillary and being like, good God, what a fucking monster.
oh my God, yeah. I never was very attracted to Hillary Clinton. I don't know how you could be, but I understand she once was a little more appealing than she definitely is now. But what does that mean? It's not very much the standard that I'm looking for. But anyway, people will essentially find any way to romanticize some of these political figures, I think, and it makes sense she would receive a little bit of a rebrand as far as people trying to defend her in the moment in regard to her strange deflection in regard to Epstein. She never even met him, by the way, if you listen to her deposition, which is absolutely absurd. But and I think her explanation for Bill Clinton being pictured and photographed in the pool, right, and in the hot tub as well. It was just a strange defense that she attempted to deploy. But by now, I'm legitimately convinced that Epstein, again, no rags to riches story applies to this man. Like I legitimately believe he was handed the keys to an enterprise that was already fundamentally entrenched in a real way. They're utilizing Air America, right? Southern Air Transport, as Jeffrey Epstein was utilizing. But not only was Jeffrey Epstein a part of and Les Wexner, obviously using the CIA cutout to traffic weapons and drugs and more than likely children. Well, they're also they happen to be directly involved with the Finders cult, because they actually relied upon Southern Air Transport, and Marion Petty's own son apparently worked for this CIA cutout company. And Marion Petty is the cult leader of the Finders, right? Known as the game caller. And so if you understand that this is how it overlaps, you have a direct connection to the Epstein network, basically being passed off this private jetliner that was operating under a CIA cutout company to legitimately illegally transport weapons, drugs, and children. So from one child sex trafficking network out of Washington, D.C. to another. That's legitimately what transpired. And so just kind of like looking back through the strange connections to Epstein and potentially revealing this hidden genealogy that is very much, I think, just people are far too, it's under acknowledged and people are far too unaware of this. And it came in the form of this email correspondence between Ariane de Rothschild and Epstein in the files. And so basically you have Ariane de Rothschild claiming that Jeffrey Epstein and the Rothschilds and Epsteins essentially financed Hitler when he was destitute in Vienna. And now that alone is obviously the direct context of the mind control operation and him potentially being a mind controlled male prostitute at the time, attending these clubs with Freud, all these strange individuals like apparently Lenin was in the area as well, and so you have these high profile figures. They're all basically attending these nightclubs in Vienna together at the same time. This is allegedly during the time that Bridget, the memoirs of Bridget Hitler, claimed that Hitler's going over these mind control pamphlets from Tavistock at late hours of the evening, and seemed like he was basically she claimed he essentially was luggageless, I believe, when he showed up on her doorstep, and would stay up for all hours of the night just poring over these strange pamphlets. But anyway, the point being is that this lines up as far as the timetable, right? And so it's possible that this is legitimately accurate. And I would just from the reference point of the email correspondence, I very much take this seriously and consider this reality. And so this is during the time that Hitler's allegedly living in a shelter that's funded by the Rothschilds and Epsteins, right, in Vienna. And so you look into the actual email, and it says, first, it turns out to be 100% true. Hitler was selling his clothes and artwork and living in a shelter funded by Jews. Epstein, Rothschild, and Gutman. No conspiracy. The Epsteins were the Vienna bankers, bought their bank on the ring, hence still Peleus Epstein. Not entirely sure what that means. Where are you? I'm in bed with your cold. Whether it is a way to say that generosity is not rewarded or the conspiracy theory still exists is quite pathetic. Now here you have, I thought you'd find amusing, this is the interesting part, that in a Harvard class on Hitler, they told the story of when he was so poor, he lived in a shelter for the homeless and destitute that had been financed by the three wealthy families, the Gutmans, the Epsteins, and the Rothschilds. It turns out to be accurate. So knowing the connections that Epstein had to Harvard, obviously they would be teaching a strange class and providing that interesting connection to the Rothschild, Gutman, and Epstein bankers in Vienna, financing the destitute Hitler in a strange shelter. So I just have to say, the Rothschilds and Epsteins having a strange alliance all the way back to the early 1900s Vienna to finance Hitler just before his rise to power in the Tool Society to create the Third Reich, then I would have to say the genealogy that is very much hidden and seems to have been strategically so just as far as the strategic nature of kind of covering up this potential reality, it makes a lot more sense to me. But
I think we've done it's been almost probably over 500 episodes now, and over again it's like, by the way, this goes back to World War II, Nazi Germany, Hitler, like everything that we're dealing with right now feels like the closure of an act. Like if you were watching Planet Earth as a film.
Yeah, they're ready to wrap it up.
Yeah, there was like
feel the tension.
This last act starts in, the early 1900s, and all the characters are pretty much the
71 episodes.
571 episodes. I would love to know what number of those episodes involve, some sort of information that points back to this time period and how it's directly correlated with what's happening right now. And I think that Honestly, young Hillary Clinton
I don't know what you guys are talking about.
somehow being passable right now is, I think this is a direct result of the Thule Society. I don't see any way
Right.
around it. This is the work of Himmler and some sort of black magic, because what the fuck happened there? That's very strange. And I'm not saying that I definitely would by any means. I'm just saying she was totally unfuckable. We have a recommendation.
Yeah, we'll bring it into a close because we've been going. It's a long day, but somebody asked a question in the chat that is too tempting to pass up. They want to know. B guy says, Austin, do you have any dive on those 10 now missing or dead scientists? This is it, like, in relationship to disclosure.
10, I thought it was just fucking 9 the other day.
Aliens, yeah, and it's 10 now.
It's 10 now, yeah.
Yeah,
Man.
where you at on this stuff?
I think that more than likely they are conducting some sort of clandestine, covert a scientific experimentation program that they would need to enlist some of these high-level nuclear experts, maybe physicists, whatever these scientists' roles were. I forget now, but I do think that the fact that they're disappearing, it's not necessarily they're all dying.
Not finding their mangled bodies, yeah.
Right. And even when you do look at the interesting stories of the individuals who did die under suspicious circumstances, it's a strange sort of timeline, right, of how it played out and how they're kind of wrinkling it all into each other as if it's this
one of them died like
narrative.
2023.
Yeah, there's no autopsy, just
no death certificate.
Yeah,
they're acting like there's a sort of a chronological, direct timeline and connection to how this came to fruition. I don't necessarily believe that this applies. I think more than likely this is some sort of raising an alarm, in a strange way over the current, I guess maybe even the potential nuclear threat of the escalation in the war with Iran, just in regard to even Trump threatening to basically nuke them, right? Which that in itself kind of drew a lot of attention. But I found it interesting that Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, all throughout the negotiations, this is before the ceasefire negotiations that were just, intended to fail, and I think that was the ultimate consequence and result they were looking for, which is why they seemed very overjoyed, right, with the result, in the just the interesting kind of public, just when they addressed this, the failing negotiations publicly, obviously, in that strange press opportunity following the Pakistan 21-hour meeting. But I did find it interesting, though, that clearly these individual scientists are linked to, extraordinary sensitive research programs, right? And go back to some of the most Los Alamos and things of that nature, right? Which we all know have very interesting ties to a lot of these covert and clandestine operations and programs, like stemming out of Blue Book, right? Which goes back to Los Alamos as well. But it feels like the Disclosure Project linked to, because of the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory being involved and all of these other things, it feels like a military operation given a cover, right? Given a cover story. And this it'll raise the alarm for a brief period of time. And within 2 weeks, this will probably be yesterday's news, right? And I would imagine. But it doesn't mean that it's not important and somehow vital to some ongoing sort of a program that they're clandestinely funding and operating under this false sort of framework of this story of the disappearing scientists. But it could also be priority targeted assassinations. You never know. This could be some interesting. Now now let's say certain scientists who are potentially viable targets are now going into protection under some sort of covert cover story as well. That's possible. I could imagine a world where certain expert scientists are targeted by foreign governments or foreign intelligence assets who are domestically attempting to prioritize them for targeted assassination purposes. But it's hard to make heads or tails of what exactly, the purpose of this was or is. But strange as far as the stories of some of the disappearances, though, leaving their homes on foot and, abandoning these essential belongings and things of that nature. I mean, it's hard to to again have a real like understanding or conclusion other than these are all high-level scientists connected to Los Alamos and directly to the Disclosure Project, in my opinion, which is very much being activated. Yeah, I think that the extraterrestrial phenomenon in general is very much being exploited and weaponized, and they will try to sort of utilize this to I think almost construct this new age sort of ideology that will then be overwhelmingly embraced by the average person who's kind of suffering from the inevitable God hole and the ultimate questions they cannot answer. And subconsciously, many of these people are kind of desperately filling that hole with this looming potential threat of extraterrestrial life forms and things of that nature. When in reality, I think they're just desperately looking for a distraction, their own insignificant lifestyle that that they haven't addressed and reflected upon and attempted to better themselves personally in that way. But yeah, it's just too much for me to. I need to do a deep dive on those disappearances because I've only kind of cursory just investigated through reading a couple articles in regard to it, but I haven't personally come to any real conclusion as to why or what motivation is behind this potentially, right? But anyway, I think the convenient timing of staging, like for example, Claudia Sheinbaum, the very white and very Jewish Mexican president who just so happened to strategically kill cash just this past week, right? Which is very interesting. Yeah.
I heard that there were talks of that. I didn't realize that they went ahead and did that. Jeez.
Oh yeah. Yeah, she legitimately did actually go through with it, and I found it kind of interesting because instantly they claimed that so she came out and mandated that cash payments will be eliminated specifically at gas stations and toll booths in Mexico by the end of 2026. She's pushing for a fully digital payment system as part of her administration's efforts to, quote, modernize the economy. The initiative aims to reduce reliance on cash and improve efficiency in financial transactions across the country. So that's allegedly what it's actually for. You read through a little bit of some of the Mexico news publications that were covering this. It says, as part of her goal of digitizing the Mexican economy, President Claudia Sheinbaum said on Thursday that cash payments are basically being eliminated starting this year. So she's working with the banking sector to standardize digital payment procedures nationwide to promote their use and especially apparently to facilitate digital payments for all Mexicans. So our goal this year is to make digital payment of gasoline and tolls mandatory. This is what the president said. So this will allow us to move forward with the digitization of the country through other schemes. That was a quote. So
was she rubbing her hands when she wrote that?
Right.
Listen, I'll be real. I don't know when the last time I used cash at the gas station was. I don't even know how the fuck that works. Give them $20. If it's more, then I got to go back in the store.
Yeah, I don't know how that works.
And then at tolls too, I get it. But like, yeah, the logical conclusion to this is that it's going to be everywhere, and you're not going to be able to use it. You're not going to have the choice, and that's horrific.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And at the exact same time, X reports that they're working on a biometric authentication to use the platform. It says, quote, verify your identity to continue using X. Biometric authentication required. It appears they are going to use Amazon recognition face liveness. So if that's the reality, then, you know, it is legitimately going to push forward this totalitarian notion of KYC, know your customer verification. And I think that will extend at a certain point to online presence in general, just being able to even have even be able to use the internet in general. You will have to KYC. You'll have to actually verify through a state, essentially a state identification process. You will have to provide that to even engage online in general. So no more anonymity, and this will inevitably, I think, it will cause some just diabolical impact and effects on our ability to remain willing, I guess, to openly speak our minds, right, and not self-censor. I think that will lead many people to effectively self-censor themselves, and this is all happening as end-to-end encryption is proven to be an entire false framework. It was just a deception in general, and I think WhatsApp, it was proven through a class action lawsuit, right, that Meta secretly let employees, contractors like Accenture and third parties read, intercept, and store your private messages without consent. So
it's so funny. You know how many boomer relatives I have? They're like, you got to get WhatsApp.
It's like
You got to get WhatsApp.
WhatsApp's been compromised for 8 years.
yeah, exactly. And this is all, again, the world's most powerful reset, as the president has said himself, right, this past week. That's what I view the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, the blockading the blockade. It's not 5D chess, all right? This is a designed, controlled demolition of the global economy. And until people come to their senses and address this for what it is, you see the CEO of sustainability and leadership, right, apparently named Lindsay Hooper. It's the Institute of Sustainability. And she comes out and claims that water, soil, and oxygen should not be infinitely accessible. She claims, she proposes classifying them as natural assets and placing them on a global balance sheet. So the stories about having to pay for a breath of air, she says, will soon no longer be gloomy jokes, but a very real prospect.
Well, somebody should kill her in Minecraft.
Well then.
Right.
Well then, David.
And by the way, you know, the Ariane de Rothschild that I mentioned, talking about Epstein's hidden genealogy and the Epstein, Rothschild, Gutman bankers in Vienna, she also was caught up in the files talking about human hunting parties, right? Now, this directly overlaps with, at the very least, the Marc Dutroux case, and also, I believe, the Kincora scandal in Northern Ireland. But the notion that she's corresponding with Epstein, right, saying thrilling hunt, right? And I think she went on to even mention, got it, amazing old male and amazing hunt. My bankers should be careful. This was what she says. So not entirely sure what the hell that's supposed to mean, but there have been many rumors for years and years that on their property in Austria, the Rothschilds have legitimately been effectively forming human hunting parties. And I think this potentially applies to Little St. James Island as well. I don't see a world where Blink Twice wasn't directly, kind of illustrating.
That's the problem now, is that it's all been sensationalized through Hollywood, and so there's a part of the human psyche that will now associate it's synonymous with fiction, in other words, and I think that when it's a trope that we've been subjected to for a long time. It's like when you bring up a conspiratorial concept like that, there's already 7 blockbuster films that have been created on the matter, and so people look at you sideways. Like Eyes Wide Shut? You mean they get together and they have these parties and they do what? No, that's a movie. That's Tom Cruise, asshole. I think that, whatever, I've already seen a couple of films come out this year about that very sort of thing, hunting people at these elite parties. And so I think one of them even happened on an island. Go figure. But
so before you guys force me to stop, which I understand and I appreciate it. But there's this video I wanted to show you guys because I hadn't seen it for the longest time. It wasn't until recently that I actually was exposed to this original news broadcast, right? Which basically it goes on to discuss the Finders cult, but it originally is in regard to this CIA recruitment program for children. And this is through Operation MKUltra. And so I just wanted to kind of show this longstanding, a strategic playbook that's been relied upon for generations of traumatizing these vulnerable children.
Let it rip.
Oh, shit. If it'll load. Sorry.
Let it buffer.
What the hell, man? There we go.
Segment 3 this evening is titled The Children and the CIA. We've learned a lot of unknown activities of the CIA in years past, some of them disturbing, to say the least. Tonight, we'll learn of the agency's interest in children. Paul Altmeyer of our investigative unit has assembled these facts.
These are home movies taken in the 1950s at a European camp of the Children's International Summer Village, a program designed to bring together children from around the world for a better understanding of one another. NBC News has learned that the CIA was studying these youngsters, some as young as 11, as possible future recruits. The studies took place at summer camps in Hannefest, Norway, and Vienna, Austria in 1959 and 1960. According to CIA documents we have examined, this was Sub-Project 103 of the agency's top-secret MK Ultra program. San Antonio, Texas. NBC News has also learned that the CIA paid for a study of adolescents here and in 2 other Texas cities, Austin and El Paso, in 1958 and 1959. It was a study of how youngsters behave without adult supervision. This study, MK Ultra Sub-Project 102, refers to data being collected on 462 subjects in 7 secondary schools. No child is identified by name.
What is known tonight is this: authorities have the children and the 2 men accused of abusing those children, and evidence that they may be only part of a larger, dreadful story. CBS News correspondent Rita Braver reports.
Law enforcement authorities suspect they may have stumbled on an international child abuse ring when an anonymous call led police in Tallahassee, Florida, to this park. 2 well-dressed men were discovered with 6 filthy, ragged, insect-bitten children, aged 2 to 6.5. A passerby with a home video camera took these pictures as the men were arrested and booked for child abuse. The children were confused, said they'd been traveling for a long time in a van, stopping at camps. Today, police released these photographs, hoping to learn more about the 6 youngsters who said they didn't know where they came from or where they were going.
But at least one of the 6 were sexually abused.
The 2 men reportedly told police the children were being weaned from their mothers and taken to Mexico for a special school for brilliant children. Papers the men were carrying led to Washington, D.C., where police last night searched a residence used by a commune or cult known as the Finders.
The women are always pregnant, and they have a child, and then they seem like they get pregnant again.
And there was another search at this Finders warehouse where law enforcement authorities said they found a photographic studio, a computer bank, and at least 3 large bags full of slides showing, according to one source, satanic, ritualistic activities involving torture, bloodletting, and sexually explicit acts involving children. Virginia police are now investigating a farm where the group reputedly brought children.
Well, it looked like to me that was awful, didn't weigh very much.
You don't think they were well cared for then?
I think they were malnutrition.
No members of the Finders were apprehended, but police say they do have some leads. The FBI and U.S. Customs Service have now joined the investigation, and officials say they're still trying to figure out exactly what is going on and how these and perhaps other children may be involved. Rita Braver, CBS News, Washington.
They had no idea what they're reporting on.
No, especially at that time.
No.
They could not. There's no way they could understand the scope of that.
Exactly. And that's why I think I was just watching Paul Benassi, who's a victim of Franklin, but he also very much had references in the Finders case, right? And it's interesting because he suffered severely from multiple personality disorder, dissociative identity disorder, and he claimed to have been transported across the U.S., forced to have sex with various people, forced to deliver drugs, forced to participate in satanic snuff films, where Larry King, Lawrence E. King, was present, right? Who ran the Franklin Credit Union in Omaha, Nebraska, and so basically the point being is that he identified even the Bohemian Grove. my bad. The Bohemian Grove in Northern California. Yeah, you guys have legitimately. Every time I say Bohemian Grove, I say bro.
I try to talk about it. I also say bro. I'm like, shit, man. This is not good.
But still, this was mentioned by Paul Benassi as being a well-known gathering meeting site for these politicians, as the location specifically of Bohemian Grove being a location of satanic murder that was being conducted. And he had insider knowledge, obviously, of many different satanic ritual abuse cases all throughout the country. He even actually claims that, and this is fascinating in itself, is that basically his so it's very interesting because essentially his stepbrother, right, which is very interesting to me, it was the first victim of John Wayne Gacy, right? So that alone is absolutely fascinating, that Paul Bonassi's stepbrother, through the marriage or remarriage of his mother, I believe, led to essentially the very first victim of John Wayne Gacy, which overlaps to the Delta Project and the Odyssey Foundation. It is insane. And I'll get his name, actually. It's, I think, Timothy, if I remember correctly. But Paul Bonassi's stepbrother, yeah, it's a fascinating aside, obviously. But he is known as John Wayne Gacy's first known victim. And it's mentioned that Paul's mother was Marilyn May. And she was divorced, basically divorced his biological father, married a man named Jack McCoy. So Jack McCoy passed away in 1983. But you can basically find his through like looking up Find a Grave. He has a page dedicated to his death, essentially, Jack McCoy. And this is where you can discover that he has a son who's named Timothy McCoy. And Timothy McCoy was mentioned by Paul Bonassi, right, as being his stepbrother as well, and just so happens to be the very first victim of John Wayne Gacy, who he allegedly claimed killed out of self-defense. But yeah, that's another overlapping arc to one Paul Bonassi. But ultimately, I was rewatching this investigative interview, right? This interview interrogation sort of setting with Bonassi, and it's really interesting because he seems to transition into his alternate personality mid-conversation, and that in itself was kind of fascinating to see, just witness firsthand that he's still very much affected by the DID, and you would have to imagine that's the case. But anyway, he seemingly gives these details, right, of these case details in regard to various other satanic ritual abuse cases that included like Minnesota. I think Jordan, Minnesota was one of them, where this individual perpetrator named Jim Rudd was the only defendant charged, apparently. And then you have a case in Bakersfield as well, where several individuals were criminally charged for sexual abuse of children within the context of ritual abuse. So this is factually reinforced, right? So West Lee is the original alternate identity created by Monarch when Paul Bonassi was 7 years old. West Lee is what the name was given to this alternate personality. And it was allegedly the alter that was programmed to be a child prostitute for the purpose of blackmailing politicians and high priority targets. So that really was a fascinating example as far as what I witnessed in this strange testimony interview with Paul Bonassi, because he discusses Project Monarch and how he's unwilling to even answer phones anymore, because essentially this can trigger his alter, and basically that they were attempting to do that very thing in order.
In other words, what the like a frequency could come through or a code word could come through.
Yeah, like it was a code word. It was a code word, and so. Are you guys willing to go 2 more minutes with me, and I can show you the interview that I was talking about, and then we'll end it, and I'll leave it alone. But it's something that I feel like as an example, just understanding the level of how much you can actually exercise free will if you are a strategic and targeted asset that is traumatically abused under the Monarch project or program, then you are effectively always imprisoned by these techniques for a lifetime in a way. And I don't think you can almost recondition your mind to kind of free yourself from the control mechanisms in place. You're not even aware of the trigger words and code phrases that they utilize to trigger the alters, which is extraordinary in itself.
I was created by a government program.
Which government program?
Monarch.
And what is Monarch?
Monarch is an operation that was created by the United States government to create spies for other countries. They use children for the purpose that they are easily integrated into multiple personalities because they can dissociate. The program was to, as a young man, get adults who were powerful political leaders into positions where they could be compromised.
That was your mission?
That was the initial mission. The whole mission was for me to go into the military service and become an officer. And a few years after that, retire from the service. Not retire after 20 years, but after 6 years. And move to Germany. And then their initial plan to take over or to run the government was to put me in an ambassador spot. And then later to come back to the United States and to run for an office. And they would be the ones who controlled everything that I did.
So you would be an operative, so to speak?
I would be a puppet.
A puppet. And you say this plan broke down in 1986, but yet you told me that you still felt that you were under the control.
I am still under their control because I do not answer phones anymore because that's how they get the others to the triggers, is what I'll call them. They're not personalities. They contain no memories at all. They were put in as hypnotic suggestions and only come out when, as I said, a code is presented to them. And that happened several times in 1989, which is why Paul and Mikey's memories are so confused. At that time, they were attempting to destroy me because they were attempting to access suicidal personalities and other personalities that would get me in trouble with law enforcement. When they program the personalities, or the triggers, as I call them, they would call me up and they would use a code. I would simply switch into that trigger, go to where they told me to go, whether it would be or get on an airplane because they would already have the tickets there. They would have the tickets there under a name that only that trigger would know, and go to wherever it was. There would be somebody waiting for them in that city and take them to wherever it was that they were supposed to go, bring them back to the airport, put them on the plane. They would come back home, and as soon as they walked in the door, the memory of everything that had just happened would be erased completely.
So
that's crazy. It's crazy because at that time, I'm sure that footage was pretty ill received by a lot of people as far as like, what is this guy talking about? It sounds like bullshit. But everything he said is exactly the way these programs operate.
Right. And he is so extraordinarily traumatized as well. I mean, he was used to essentially basically run the other and manage the other child victims as he procured them on behalf of the network and would kind of talk them down on the private plane flight to their destination, which would inevitably become their final destination. And typically they would be sacrificed in the context of a snuff film on behalf of the enterprise that they would then obviously, smuggle that footage to various clientele figures within the prominent network. But he himself, basically claimed that he was running roughshod over all the other child victims. And so he would have to like talk them down on the plane flight. Like there was one specific context where he claims that he was actually responsible for chloroforming Johnny Gosh, the paper boy who went missing. And yeah, it's fascinating stuff. So
Jeez, man.
Yeah. So again, it's
none of these things happen in a vacuum. None of them happen in a vacuum. Like everything is connected. That honestly, that's why it's so hard for people outside of Conspiracyville to believe in conspiracies, because what it all leads to ultimately is like every single fucking thing is connected.
Yeah. And that's what he says Benassi confessed to playing a role in Johnny's abduction by saying that he chloroformed the nabbed boy inside the getaway car. And then he meets with Noreen Gosh, who's Johnny's mother, right? And she made the statement that leading up to Johnny's disappearance and abduction, that basically the father of Johnny had taken him to a specific military base where the Monarch boys were being managed and apparently experimented on with behavioral modification techniques, and was also the exact same military base that Paul Bonacci witnessed Lawrence E. King making a financial transaction by passing a briefcase worth of money to Michael Aquino. Very interesting. So if he's truly the right, and just knowing that Noreen goes and has a conversation with Paul while he's in jail, right? And she says Bonacci told her things that he could only know from talking with her son. And Bonacci basically did these series of revealing interviews, one of which was the context that I just showed, kind of illustrated through that video clip, was basically during all these interviews, he details more of the functions of the network and how it operated, right? But it was in 1993. He even describes being present at the founding of NAMBLA, the North American Man-Boy Love Association.
Come on, bro.
He said it was founded in a Boston Catholic church, and he even personally, allegedly, would take child pornography, right? And he would essentially smuggle the child pornography internationally into geographical hotspots where the network was in operation. And he would smuggle this child pornography to foreign countries and things of that nature on behalf of NAMBLA. So
that's fucking insane, man.
But we'll have to maybe because man, there's so much that obviously I just went entirely off off the plan of what I initially was going to talk to you guys about.
But every time, but I mean, that's,
but
I'm
telling
you know
you,
how it is. You have an open door policy. I actually want to ask you while we have the audience from Patreon here. Are you going to be at Bohemian Grove 4?
I'll be there, buddy. Yeah, 100%.
August 7th and August 8th. Guys, I want to thank you for showing up to the last one, Austin, and I'd love to have you again. So I hope you can make it out. And we'll talk, off air about that. We'll make sure that you can make it down there. But before we get out of here, Austin, I don't know if I should ask. Should I ask, Austin? Where can people find you? Let's talk about your plugs. Where can people find Austin Picard?
Okay.
And where can people find this other show that you do with Binkley and Tripoli? Because this is something that drives me nuts. That dynamic is unbelievable, but it exists in like a very peculiar place. So talk about that too.
Yeah. So obviously my Patreon is the best place that you could support me. And even at the lowest level, I believe at $3 a month, you can get access to the paywalled show, which is called Whatever This Is, with me and Brad Binkley from the Propaganda Report and Sam Tripoli from Tinfoil Hats. And yeah, it's probably
cool dynamic, man. That's an awesome show. That needs to get the hell off of there and into the public eye. I hope eventually that happens.
Thank you, brother. I really do as well, because I kind of, it's probably what I look forward to the most out of my week. And it's just it's a refreshing thing to be able to kind of objectively meet at this table of ideas and hash out in a very kind of, but also bring the levity, right? Kind of appreciate the silver linings and remember and reflect on what matters most, and how this is not something to become demoralized over, as much as I believe that is sort of the design of the spiritual impact it's supposed to have upon us.
Yes.
I think the best way we could defeat this, or push back at the very least and resist, is by enjoying our lives and by attempting to practice, our principles on a daily basis, and only affect the people we love, and in a positive way, right? And try and push them in the proper direction, just by example, not necessarily, being responsible for their intellectual right sort of position in life, but at the very least, I think we can remember and remind ourselves of only control what, or I guess only really worry about what you can control at the end of the day. And
which is really only your immediate, your family, your loved ones, your household, that these are the things that are actually in your control. I think it's when we go outside of that and we start trying to think that we're going to save the world or some shit, you'll lose your mind in that endeavor.
Exactly. Yeah. And I personally struggle with that just in general, right? I have like this obsession with controlling the outcome, you know, and being able to, which is always like anytime I do an interview, I feel like there's this fundamental sense of failure by the end of it, because I didn't take the chronological path that I was hoping to present the information and things of that nature. It's my own personal plight, but in reality, I think there's something just extraordinarily valuable in just honestly cultivating these relationships, right? So meeting you guys, having these conversations is what motivates me, and having that show with Sam and Brad is just it's surreal, and it's something that I'm forever grateful for the opportunity, and I do feel as if, you know, having those people who will bring you back down to earth and again remind you what is beautiful in life, man, and then live by the law of abundance, right? And only try and lift you up, you know, in this, it's a beautiful mindset, and it's a philosophy that I hope to embrace as well, and move forward with that in mind. And so, yeah, definitely support me if you can through the Patreon. Other than that, the Underclass podcast is where you can find me. I'm desperate to I think my top priority was to actually take the Epstein files into what's called the Epstein's Ninth Circle sex sacrificing cult, which ties into the Pope. And this is oh yeah, absolutely. And a disappearance of Emanuela Orlandi is the name of it. But we'll have to get into this because it's the ninth gate is what it references in many ways, which is obviously, if you think about the Ninth Gate, the film by Roman Polanski, it was
That's the one with Johnny Depp, right?
Yes, and it came out. So we're talking sex magic, right? He's legitimately pursuing this ancient grimoire, and essentially is trying to. It's a fascinating story. We can get into it next time, but this is insane in terms of the Ninth Circle, because it goes back generations and essentially initiates the Pope. It has basically been initiated into the Ninth Circle for generations by now. And this involves the CIA, the Rothschilds, the Vatican, Queen Elizabeth. So at the end of the day, when you have Epstein and Steve Bannon referencing the Ninth Circle, and then you can tie this into a legitimate, a court case of the international court that investigated Pope Leo's complicity in the ritual murder of children, and apparently the disappearance of this young girl on the summer solstice. Anyway, it's terrible.
Anyway, that's such a crazy move. Well, we're gonna. I mean, I somebody just brought up Bohemian Grove. I'm like, what the hell are we gonna talk about at Bohemian Grove, man? This is going to be
I don't know,
an intense get
see
together.
a red dot on somebody's head.
Yeah. Well, listen, Austin, thank you, brother. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, also you do Better Off Dead. So
you're still doing that, right?
Oh yeah, already dead. Yes, yeah, for sure.
No,
I'm so sorry. Better Off Dead.
How dare you, sir?
Yeah.
Better Off Dead.
Mhm.
And
A
it's
lot of dead.
wonderful
A lot
show.
of dead. Nephilim Death Squad, Better Off Dead. A lot of dead.
And
shit.
I never entirely detailed the Mossad connections to James Alefantis, dude. I totally derailed that entire presentation.
How
So
surprising! Something that's still left on the table. I mean, that's how it is every time. But you know how it is, man. You're always welcome back, and it's always a pleasure having conversations with you.
for sure, brother. I love you guys.
Thank you, man. And guys, again, another great episode. Don't forget to obey, submit, and comply. We'll catch you next time. Peace out.